Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We're back for more of Shae's story show, and she's reading Windup Girl.
By Paolo Bacigalupi.
Chicken-
Bacigalupi.
chicken.
So, just to touch base, we have in the Windup Girl in this biopunk universe, Emiko, the Windup Girl, is seeking a way to get out of Bangkok. Anderson is trying to find a seed bank and is infatuated with Emiko. Hoksang is causing people to get sick, I guess. And the Tiger of Bangkok is most definitely not dead. He fell off a building, though. 15 flights. I'm sure he's fine.
Definitely not dead.
Definitely not dead. Anywho, we are just a little bit over past halfway, and let's just go ahead and jump back into it. From chapter 18. The rumor travels like fire in the dead timber of Isan. The tiger is dead. I'm sure it's fine. Trade is in ascendancy for certain. Hoksang's neck prickles as tension blossoms in the city. The man who sells a newspaper to him does not smile. A pair of white shirts on patrol scowls at every pedestrian. The people who sell vegetables seem suddenly furtive, as if they are dealing with contraband. The tiger is dead. Shamed somehow, though no one seems to know the specifics. Was he truly unmanned? Was his head truly mounted in front of the Environment Ministry as a warning to the white shirts? It makes Hoksang want to gather his money and flee, but the blueprints in the safe keep him bound to his desk. He hasn't felt undercurrents like this since the incident. He stands and goes to the office shutters, peers out to the street, goes back to his treadle computer. A minute later, he moves to the factory's observation window to study the ties working on the lines. It's as if the air is charged with lightning. A storm is coming, full of water spouts and tidal waves. Hazards outside the factory, hazards within. Halfway into the shift, Mai came again, shoulder slumped. Another sick worker, sent off to a third hospital. Sukhumvit this time. And down below, at the heart of the manufacturing system, something foul reaches for them all. Hoksang's skin crawls at the thought of disease brewing in those vats. 3 is too many for coincidence. If there are 3, then there will be more. Unless he reports the problem. But if he reports anything, the white shirts will burn the factory to the ground, and Mr. Lank's Kinkspring plans will go back across the seas, and everything will be lost. A knock comes on the door. Light? Mai slips into the room, looking frightened and miserable. Her black hair is disarrayed, her dark eyes scan the room, looking for signs of the farang. He's gone to his lunch, Hoksang supplies. Did you deliver the other? Mai nods. No one saw me drop her. Good. That's something. Mai gives him a miserable why of acknowledgement. Yes, what is it? She hesitates. There are white shirts about, many of them. I saw them at the intersections, all the way to the hospital. Did they stop you? Question you? No, but there are a lot of them. More than usual, and they seem angry. It is the tiger. And trade. That is all. It can't be us. They don't know about us. She nods doubtfully, but does not leave. It is difficult for me to work here, she says. It's too dangerous now. The sickness. She stumbles on her words, finally says, I'm very sorry. If I'm dead... She trails off. I'm very sorry. Hoksang nods sympathetically. Yes, of course. You do no good for yourself if you are sick. Privately, though, he wonders what safety she can really find. Nightmares of the Yellowcard slum towers will wake him at night, shaking and grateful for what he has. The towers have their own diseases. Poverty is its own killer. He grimaces, wondering how he himself would balance the terrors of some unknown sickness against the certainty of work. No, this work is not a certainty. This is the same thinking that caused him to leave Malaya too late. His unwillingness to accept that a clipper ship was sinking and to abandon it when his head was still above the waves. Mai is wise, where he is dull. He nods sharply. Yes, of course. You should go. You have youth. You are tired. Something will come to you. He forces a smile. Something good. She hesitates. Yes? He asks. I hoped I would have my last pay. Of course. Hoksang goes to the petty cash safe, swings it open, reaches in, and pulls out a hand of red paper. In a fit of reckless generosity that he doesn't quite understand himself, he hands the entire wad over to her. Here, take this. She gasps at the amount. Good, thank you. She wise, thank you. It's nothing. Save it. Be careful with it. A shout rises from the factory floor. Then more shouts. Hoksang feels a surge of panic. The manufacturing line stalls. The stop bell rings belatedly. Hoksang rushes to the door, looks down at the lines. Ploy is waving her hand over the gates. Others are abandoning their posts, running to the doors. Hoksang cranes his neck, seeking the cause. What is it? I can't tell. He turns and runs to the shutters, yanks them open. White shirts fill the avenue, marching in ordered ranks. He sucks in his breath. White shirts. Are they coming here? Hoksang doesn't answer. He looks over his shoulder at the safe. With a little time, no, he's being a fool. He waited too long in Malaya. He won't make the same mistake twice. He goes to the petty cash safe and begins pulling out all the remaining cash, stuffing it into a sack. Are they coming because of the sick? Maya asks. Hoksang shakes his head. It doesn't matter. Come here. He goes to another window and opens the shutters, revealing the blaze of the factory rooftop. Mai peers out over hot tiles. What's this? An escape route. Yellow cards always prepare for the worst. He smiles as he hoists her up. We are paranoid, you know. That was a quick chapter.
Mm-hmm. Stuff's picking up.
Yep. You emphasized to Akarat that this was a time-sensitive matter? Offer? Anderson asks. What are you complaining about? Carlyle toasts Anderson over a warm glass of rice beer. He hasn't had you ripped apart by megadons. I can put resources in his hands, and we aren't asking for much in return. Not by historical standards. Things are going his way. He might not think he needs you. Not with the white shirts, bowing and scraping. He hasn't had this much influence since the December 12th debacle. Anderson makes a face of irritation. He reaches for his drink, then sets it back. He doesn't want more warm booze, but between the swelter of the day and the Sato, his mind is already dumb and clouded. He's starting to suspect that Sir Francis is trying to drive Farang away, slowly whittling them down down with empty promises and warm whiskey. No ice today. So sorry. Around the open bar, the few other patrons all look as heat-stunned as he is. You should have joined up when I first offered, Carlyle observes. You wouldn't be stewing now. When you first offered, you were a blowhard who just lost an entire dirigible. Carlyle laughs. Missed the big picture on that one, didn't you? Anderson doesn't respond to the man's needling. It's annoying to have Akarat dismiss the offer of support so easily, but the truth is, Anderson can barely focus on his job. Emiko fills his thoughts and his time. Every night he seeks her out at Plonchit, monopolizes her, rains bot on her. Even with Raleigh's greed, the Windup's company is cheap. In a few more hours, the sun will sink, and she will once again totter up on stage. The first time he saw her perform, she caught him watching, and her eyes had clutched at him, begging to be saved from what was about to occur. My body is not mine, she told him, her voice flat when he asked about the performances. The men who designed me, they make me do things I cannot control, as if their hands are inside me, like a puppet, yes? Her fists clench, opening and closing unconsciously, but her voice remains subdued. They made me obedient, in all ways. And then she had smiled, prettily, and flowed into his arms, as if she had made no complaint at all. She's an animal, as servile as a dog, and yet, if he is careful to make no demands, to leave the air between them open, another version of the Windup Girl emerges, as precious and rare as a living bow tree. Her soul emerges from within the strangling strands of her engineered DNA. He wonders, if she were a real person, if he would feel more incensed at the abuse she suffers. It's an odd thing, being with a manufactured creature, built and trained to serve. She herself admits that her soul wars with itself, that she does not rightly know which parts of her are hers alone and which have been inbuilt genetically. Does her eagerness to serve come from some portion of canine DNA that makes her always assume that natural people outrank her for pack loyalty? Or is it simply the training that she has spoken of? The sound of marching boots intrudes on Anderson's thoughts. Carlyle straightens from his slump, craning for a view of the commotion. Anderson turns and nearly knocks over his beer. White uniforms fill the street. Pedestrians and bicycles and food carts are scattering aside, frantically piling against the walls of rubble and factories making way for the Environment Ministry's troops. Anderson cranes his neck. Spring rifles and black batons and gleaming white uniforms, as far as he can see. A streaming dragon of determination marching past, the resolute face of a nation that has never been conquered. Jesus and Noah, Carlyle mutters. Anderson watches carefully. That's a lot of white shirts. At some unknown signal, two of the white shirts peel away from the main group and enter Sir Francis's. They survey the farang, lying stupid in the heat with barely masked disgust. Sir Francis, normally so absent and unconcerned, bustles out and whines deeply to the men. Anderson jerks his head towards the door. Time to go, you think? Carlyle gives him a grim nod. Let's not be too obvious, though. A little late for that. You think they're looking for you? Carlyle's face is tight. I was actually hoping it was you they were after. Sir Francis finishes speaking with the white shirts. He turns and calls out to his patrons. So sorry. We are closed now. Everything is closed. You must leave immediately. Anderson and Carlyle both sway to their feet. I shouldn't have drank so much, Carlyle mutters. They stumble outside with the other bar patrons. Everyone stands under the blazing sun, blinking stupidly as more white shirts stream by. The thud of boot falls fills the air, echoes from the walls, thrums with a promise of violence. Anderson leans close to Carlyle's ear. This isn't another of Akarat's manipulations, I don't suppose. Not like your lost dirigible or anything. Carlyle doesn't answer, but the grim expression on his face tells Anderson everything he needs to know. Hundreds of white shirts fill the street, and more keep coming. The uniformed river is unending. They have to be pulling troops from the countryside. There's no way this many white shirts work in the city. They're the ministry's front line for the burnings, Carlyle says, for when Sibisosis or poultry flu gets out of hand. He starts to point, then drops his hand, not wanting to draw attention to them, nods instead. See that badge? The tiger and the torch. They're practically a suicide division. That's where the Tiger of Bangkok got his start. Anderson nods grimly. It's one thing to complain about the white shirts, to joke about their stupidity and hunger for bribes. It's another to watch them march by in shining ranks. The ground shakes with trampling feet. Dust rises. The street reverberates with their increasing number. Anderson has an almost uncontrollable urge to flee. They are predators. He is prey. He wonders if Peters and Lai had even this much warning before Finland went wrong. You have a gun? He asks Carlyle. Carlyle shakes his head. More trouble than they're worth. Anderson scans the street for Lao Gu. My rickshaw man's gone missing. Goddamn yellow cards, Carlyle laughs quietly. Always got their fingers up to the wind. I'll bet there's not a yellow card in the city who's not in hiding right now. Anderson grips Carlyle's elbow. Come on. Try not to draw attention to yourself. Where are we going? To put our own fingers to the wind, see what's happening. Anderson leads him down a side street, aiming for the main freight clung, the canal that leads to the sea. Almost immediately, they run into a cordon of white shirts. The guards lift their spring rifles and wave Anderson and Carlyle away. I think they're securing the whole district, Anderson says. The locks, the factories. Quarantine? They'd have masks if they were here to burn. A coup, then. Another December 12th? Anderson glances at Carlyle. A bit ahead of schedule for that, aren't you? Carlyle eyes the white shirts. Maybe General Proctor has gotten the jump on us. Anderson tugs him in the opposite direction. Come on, we'll go to my factory. Maybe Hoksang knows something. All along the streets, white shirts are busily rousting people from their shops, encouraging them to close their doors. The last of the shopkeepers are shoving wooden panels into sockets and sealing their storefronts. Another company of white shirts marches by. Anderson and Carlyle arrive at the Spring Life factory in time to see Megadons streaming out of the main gates. Anderson snags one of the Megadon men. The Mahout switches his beast to a halt and regards Anderson as the Megadon snorts and shuffles its feet impatiently. Line workers stream around their obstruction. Where's Hoksang? Anderson asks. Yellow card boss. Where? The man shakes his head. More workers are hurrying out. Did the white shirts come here? He asks. The man says something too fast for Anderson to pick up. Carlyle translates. He says the white shirts are coming for revenge, coming to get back their face. The man motions emphatically, and Anderson steps out of the way. Across the street, Chaozu factory is also evacuating its workers. None of the street's storefronts are open now. Food carts have all been dragged indoors or wheeled away in freight. and fright. Every door on the street is shut. A few ties peer out from high windows, but the street itself contains only dispersing workers in marching white shirts. The last of the Spring Life workers hurries past, none of them looking at Carlisle or Lake as they flee. Worse by the minute, Carlisle mutters. His face has gone pale under his tropical tan. A new wave of white shirts surrounds the corner, 6 wide, a snake extending down the length of the street. Anderson's skin prickles at the sight of the closed shop fronts. It's as if everyone is preparing for a typhoon. Let's make like the natives and get inside. He grabs one of the heavy iron gates and hauls against it. Help me. It takes them both to drag the gates closed and set the crossbars. Anderson slaps locks into place and leans against the hot iron, panting. Carlisle studies the bars. Does this mean we're safe or trapped? We're not in Clom Prim prison yet, so let's assume we're winning. But inwardly, Anderson wonders. There are too many variables in play, and it makes him nervous. He remembers a time in Missouri when the Grahamites rioted. There had been tension, some small speeches, and then it simply erupted in field burning. No one had seen the violence coming. Not a single intelligence officer had anticipated the cauldron boiling beneath the surface. Anderson had ended up perched atop a grain silo, choking on smoke of high-grow fields going up in sheets of flame, firing steadily at rioters on the ground with a spring rifle he'd salvaged from a slow-moving security guard. And all the while, he had wondered how everyone had missed the signs. They lost the facility because of that blindness, and now it is the same. A sudden eruption and the surprise of realizing that the world he understands is not the one he actually inhabits. Is it Pracha making a play for absolute power, or Akarat causing more trouble? Or is it simply a new plague? It could be anything. As Anderson watches white shirts stream past, he can almost smell the smoke of burning silos and high-grow. He waves Carlisle into the factory. Let's find Hoksang. If anyone knows anything, it will be him. Upstairs, the administrative offices are empty. Hoksang's incense burns steadily, sending up gray silk streamers. Papers lie abandoned on the desk, rustling under the gentle breeze of crank fans. Carlisle laughs, low and cynical. Lost an assistant? Looks that way. The petty cash safe is unlocked. Anderson peers at the shelves. At least 30,000 baht gone missing. God damn, the bastard robbed me. Carlisle pushes open a shutter, revealing roof tiles stretching down the length of the factory. Take a look at this. Anderson frowns. He was always messing with the latches on that one. I thought he wanted to keep people out. I think he's ducked out of it instead, Carlisle laughs. You should have fired him when you had the chance. The tramp of more boots on cobbles echoes up to them, the only sound now in the street. Well, give him points for foresight. You know what the Thai say? When a yellow card runs, watch out for the megadont behind him. Anderson surveys the offices one last time, then leans out the window. Come on, let's see where my assistant went. You serious? If he didn't want to meet the white shirts, then we don't either. And he obviously had a plan. Anderson hoists himself up and climbs out into the sun. His hands burn on the tiles. He straightens, shaking them. It's like standing on a skillet. He studies the roof, breathing shallowly in the blast furnace heat. Oops. Down the length of the roof, the Chaosu factory beckons. Anderson goes a few paces, then turns and calls back. Yeah, I think he went this way. Carlisle climbs out onto the roof. Sweat gleams on his face and soaks his shirt. They make their way over reddish tiles as the air boils around them. At the far end of the roof, their route terminates at an alley shielded from Thanon Fosri by a winding of the lane. Across the gap, a ladder dangles to the ground. I'll be damned. They both stare down into the alley 3 stories below. Your old Chinaman jumped that? Carlisle asks. Looks like it. And then went down the ladder. Anderson peers over the edge. Long way down. He can't keep smiling darkly at Hawk Sing's resourcefulness. Sly bastard. It's a long jump. Not too bad. And if Hawk Sing... Anderson doesn't get the chance to finish his sentence. Carlisle flies past him, hurtling across the gap. The man lands hard and hits the roof, rolling. A second later, he's up, grinning and waving for Anderson to follow. Anderson scowls and makes his own run at the gap. The landing rattles his teeth. By the time he straightens, Carlisle is already disappearing over the edge, climbing down the ladder. Anderson follows, favoring a bruised knee. Carlisle is surveying the alley when Anderson drops down beside him. That way goes to the Thanon Fosri and our friends, Carlisle says. We don't want that. Hawk Sang is paranoid, Anderson says. He'll have a path worked out, and it won't be on the main streets. He heads in the opposite direction, almost immediately. A slot between 2 factory walls appears. Carlisle shakes his head in admiration. Not bad. They squeeze into the narrow way, scraping for more than 100 meters until they reach a door of dusted tin. As they push aside the crude gate, a grandmother looks up from a bundle of washing. They're in a courtyard of sorts. Laundry hangs everywhere, sun pouring a rainbow through damp fabrics. The old woman waves at them to proceed past her. A moment later, they're out in a tiny sui, which in turn gives way to a series of maze-like alleys that twist through a makeshift slum for the coolie laborers who work the levee locks, transporting goods from the factories to the sea. More micro-alleys. Laborers crouched over noodles and fried fish. Weatherall shacks, sweat, and the dimness of overhanging roofs. Burning chili smoke that makes them cough and cover their mouths as they forge through the swelter. Where the hell are we? Carlisle murmurs, and completely turned around. Doesn't matter. They thread past dogs lying dazed in the heat and Cheshires perched atop refuse piles. Sweat runs down Anderson's face. The buzz of afternoon alcohol is long gone. More shadowy alleys, more tight walking spaces, twists and turns, squeezing around bicycles and scavenged piles of metal and coconut plastics. A gap opens. They spill out into diamond sunlight. Anderson sucks at the relatively fresh air, grateful to be out of the claustrophobia of the alleys. It is not a large road, but still, there's traffic on it. Carlisle says, I think I recognize this. There's a coffee guy somewhere around here that one of my clerks likes. No white shirts, at least. I need to find a way back to the Victory, Carlisle says. I've got money in their safe. How much is your head worth? Carlisle grimaces. Maybe you're right. I need to get in touch with Akarat, at least. Find out what's going on. Decide our next move. Hawk Sing and Lao Gu both disappeared, Anderson says. For now, let's make like the yellow cards and lie low. We can take a rickshaw to Sukhumvit Klong, and then take a boat to near my place. That will keep us far away from any of the factory and trade areas, and far away from all those damn white shirts. He flags down a rickshaw man, not bothering to bargain as he and Carlyle climb aboard. Away from the white shirts, Anderson can feel himself relaxing, almost feels foolish for his earlier fear. For all he knows, they could have just walked down the street and never been bothered. No need to go running across rooftops at all. Perhaps. He shakes his head frustrated. There's too little information. Hawk Sang didn't wait, just gathered up the money and ran. Anderson thinks back on the carefully planned escape route. Again, the jump. He can't help laughing. What's so funny? Just Hawk Sang. He had it all worked out. Everything set. As soon as there was trouble, shoot. Out the window he goes. Carlyle grins. I never knew you were keeping a geriatric ninja. I thought. Anderson breaks off. The traffic is slowing. Up ahead, he catches a glimpse of white shirts, stands for a better view. Hell. The starched white shirts of the Environment Ministry are in the road, blocking traffic. Carlyle pops up beside him. Checkpoint. Looks like this isn't just the factories. Anderson glances behind, hunting for a way out, but more people and cyclists are piling up, jamming the way. Should we make a run for it? Carlyle asks. Anderson scans the crowd. Beside him, another rickshaw driver stands on his pedal, studying the scene, then settles back in his seat and jingles his passing bell irritably. Their own rickshaw man joins the bell ringing. No one seems worried. Along the road, ties barter over piled reeking durian, baskets of lemon grass, and bubbling buckets of fish. They too seem unconcerned. You want just to bluff through? Hell if I know. This is some kind of power play of Praksha's. I keep telling you, Praksha's got his teeth pulled. Doesn't look like it. Anderson cranes his neck, trying to glimpse what's happening at the road block. From what he can make out, someone is arguing with the white shirts, gesturing as he speaks. A Thai man, deep mahogany skin, and a flash of gold thumb rings on his hands. Anderson strains to hear, but the words are drowned out as more cyclists pile into the jam and join in the impatient ringing of their bells. The Thais seem to believe there is nothing but an irritating traffic jam. No one is frightened, just impatient. More bicycle bells tinkle and chime, surrounding him in music. Oh, shit, Carlyle murmurs. The white shirts yank the arguing man off his bicycle. His arms flail as he goes over. His thumb rings flash in the sunlight, and then he disappears under a knot of white shirt uniforms. Ebony clubs rise and fall. Blood whips from the clubs, glistening. A dog-like yelping fills the streets. The cyclists all stop ringing their bells. The street noise fades as everyone turns and cranes their necks to see. In the silence, the man's ragged pleading carries easily. Around them, hundreds of bodies shift and breathe. People glance left and right, suddenly nervous. Like an ungulate herd that has suddenly found a predator in its midst. The dull slap of the clubs continues. Finally, the man's sobbing breaks off. The white shirts straighten. One of them turns and motions traffic forward. It is an impatient gesture, business-like, as though the people have stopped to gawk at flowers or a carnival. Hesitantly, cyclists push forward. Traffic begins to roll. Anderson sits down in his seat. Christ. The rickshaw man stands on his own pedals as they start forward. Carlyle's expression has gone tight with anxiety. His eyes flick from left to right. Last chance to run for it. Anderson can't take his gaze from the approaching white shirts. We'll be obvious if we bolt. We're fucking foraying. We're already obvious. Pedestrians and cyclists inch forward, merging through the choke point, shuffling past the carnage. A half-dozen white shirts stand around the body. Blood pools from the man's head. Flies already buzz in the red rivulets. Sticky-winged, drowning in the surfeit of calories. A Cheshire shadow crouches eagerly at the periphery, blocked from the congealing pool by a white picket barrier of uniformed trouser legs. All of the officers' cuffs are splattered red. Are spattered red, dew kisses of kinetic energy absorbed. Anderson stares at the carnage. Carlyle clears his throat nervously. A white shirt glances up at the noise, and their eyes lock. Anderson isn't sure how long they stare at one another, but the hate in the officer's eyes is unmistakable. The white shirt raises an eyebrow, challenging. He slaps his club against his leg, leaving a bloody smear. Another slap of the club, and the officer jerks his head sideways, indicating that Anderson should look away. Yep, things are definitely picking up.
Mm-hmm. Didn't take long. Didn't take long.
Nope, well, I mean, it seems that they killed their hero. Chapter 20. Death is a stage. Transiescence. A passage to a later life. If Kanya meditates on this idea long enough, she imagines that she will be able to assimilate it. But the truth is that JD is dead, and they will never meet again. And whatever JD earned for his next life, whatever incense and prayers Kanya offers, JD will never be JD. His wife will never be returned, and his 2 fighting sons can only see that loss and suffering are everywhere. Pain is the only truth, but it's better for young ones to laugh a while and feel the softness, and if this desire to coddle a child ties a parent to the wheel of existence, so be it. A child should be indulged. This is what Kanya thinks, as she rides her bicycle across the city toward the ministry and the housing that JD's descendants have been placed in. A child should be indulged. The streets are patrolled by white shirts. Thousands of her colleagues out in the street, locking down trade's crown jewels, barely controlling the rage that all the ministry feel. The fall of the tiger, the slaughter of their father, the living saint fallen. It's as painful as if they had lost Swib Nakasathian again. The Environment Ministry mourns, and the city will mourn with them. And if all proceeds according to General Praksha's plan, trade and Akarat will mourn as well. Trade has finally overstepped itself. Even Birom Bakadi says that someone must pay for the insult. At the ministry gate, she shows her passes and makes her way into the compound. She cycles down bricked paths between teak and banana trees to the housing quarters. JD's family always kept a modest house. Modest as JD was modest. But now the last whittlings of his family live in something infinitely smaller. A bitter end for a great man. He deserved better than those mildewed concrete barracks. Kanya's own home is much larger than JD's ever was, and she lives alone. Kanya leans her bicycle against a wall, stares up at the barracks. It is one of several the ministry has abandoned. In front of the place, there's a patch of weeds and a broken swing. Not far away is a weedy takraw court for the use of ministry men. At this time of day, no one is playing, and the net hangs limp in the heat. Kanya stands outside the dilapidated building, watching children play. None of them are JDs. Surat and Niwa are apparently within, probably already preparing for his funeral urn, calling the monks to chant and help ensure his successful trip into the next incarnation. She takes a breath. An unpleasant task, truly. Why me? She wonders. Why me? Why was I forced to work for Baldhead Vista? Why was I the one? She always suspected that JD knew of the extra take she got for herself and the men. But there was always JD. Pure JD. Clear JD. JD did the work because he believed. Not like Kanya. Cynical Kanya. Angry Kanya. Not like the others who did the job because it had the potential to pay well and a pretty girl might pay attention to a man in dress whites. A man who also had the authority to shut down her pad thai cart. JD fought like a tiger and died like a thief, dismembered, disemboweled, tossed to the dogs and Cheshires and crows so that there was little left of him. JD with his cock in his mouth and blood on his face, a package delivered to the ministry grounds, an invitation to war. If only the ministry could be sure of its enemy. Everyone whispers trade, but only Kanya knows for certain. She has kept JD's last mission to herself. Kanya burns at the shame of it. She starts up the stairs. Her heart thuds in her chest as she climbs. Why couldn't that damn honorable JD keep his nose out of trade? Take the warning. And now she must visit herself among the sons. Must tell the warrior boys that their father was a good fighter and had a pure heart. And now I must be his equipment. Thank you so much. It is, after all, the ministry's. Must have his equipment. Kanya raps on the door, goes back down the steps to give the family time to arrange itself. One of the boys, Surat, she thinks, opens the door, whines deeply to her, calls back inside. It's elder sister Kanya. Soon, JD's mother-in-law is at the door. Kanya whys, and the old woman whys even more in return, and lets her in. I'm so sorry to bother you. No bother. Her eyes are red. The two boys regard her solemnly. Everyone stands uncertainly together. The old woman finally says, You'll want to collect his things. Kanya is almost too embarrassed to answer, but she manages to nod. The mother-in-law guides her inside to a sleeping room. It is a sign of the old woman's grief that nothing is in order. The boys watch. The old woman points to a small desk jammed into the corner. A box of his belongings, files that JD was reading. That's everything, Kanya asks. The old woman shrugs dully. It's what he kept with him after the house was burned. I haven't touched it. He brought it here before he went to the Wat. Kanya smiles her embarrassment. Yes, sorry, of course. Why did they do this to him? Hadn't they done enough? Kanya shrugs helplessly. I don't know. Will you find them? Will you get revenge on them? She hesitates. Niwat and Surat watch her solemnly. Their playfulness is entirely gone. They have nothing. Kanya ducks her head and wise. I will find them. I swear it, if it takes me all my life. Do you have to take his things? Kanya smiles uncertainly. It's protocol. I should have come before, but... She trails off helplessly. We hoped that the tides would turn, that he would be back on the job. If there are private effects or mementos, I will return them, but I need his equipment. Of course, it's valuable. Kanya nods. She kneels beside the weatherall box of files and gear. It is a careless mangle of files and papers and envelopes and ministry gear. A spare clip of blades for a spring gun, a baton, his zipped cuffs, files, all piled together. Kanya imagines JD filling this box. Shae already lost to him. Everything else soon to be lost. No wonder he didn't bother being careful with any of it. She sifts through the stuff, finds a photograph of JD during his cadet days standing next to Prasha, both of them looking young and confident. She takes it out, thoughtful, and sets it on the desk. She looks up. The old woman has left the room, but Niwat and Surat are still there, watching her like a pair of crows. She holds out the photo. Finally, Niwat reaches out and takes it, shows it to his brother. Kanya goes through the rest of the box quickly. Everything else seems to be the ministry's. She's obscurely relieved. She won't have to return, then. A small teak box catches her attention. She opens it. Medals from JD's Muay Thai championships gleam. Kanya hands them over to the silent boys. They cluster around the evidence of their father's triumphs as Kanya finishes going through the papers. There's something in here, Niwat says, and holds up an envelope. Is it for us as well? It was with his metals? Kanya shrugs, continuing to go through the box. What's in it? Pictures? Kanya looks up, puzzled. Let me see. Niwat passes them across. Kanya shuffles through them. They seem to be a record of suspicious people that JD was interested in. Akarat figures in many. Farang. Many photos of Farang. Smiling photos of men and women around the minister like ghosts, hungry to suck at his blood. Akarat, unaware, smiling with them, happy to be standing with them. Kanya shuffles more photos. Men she doesn't recognize. Traitor Farang, presumably. Here a fat one, glutted on calories from abroad. Some pure cow or Agrigen representative visiting from Ko Angrit, perhaps. Looking to curry favor in the newly opening kingdom where trade is an ascendancy. There another, the Carlisle man who lost his dirigible. Kanya smiles slightly. How that one must have hurt. She flips past the photo and sucks in her breath, stunned. What is it? Niwat asks. What's wrong? Nothing. Kanya forces herself to say, It's nothing. The photo is of herself, drinking with Akarat on his pleasure barge. A long lens, a bad image, but herself clearly. JD knew. Kanya stares at the photo for a long time, forcing herself to breathe, staring at the photo, meditating on Kama and duty while JD's sons watch her solemn, meditating on her patron who never spoke of this photo. meditating on what a man of JD's stature knows and what he does not reveal, and what secrets can cost a person. She studies the photo, debating. Finally, she pulls it and puts it into her pocket. The rest she shoves back into the envelope. Was it a clue? Kanya nods solemnly. The boys nod back. They do not ask for more. They are good boys. She goes over the rest of the room carefully, looking for other evidence that she might have missed, but finds nothing. Finally, she bends down to pick up the box of equipment and files. It's heavy, but none of it weighs as heavily as the photo that now sits in her breast pocket like a coiled cobra. Outside, in the open air, she forces herself to breathe deeply. The stink of shame is strong in her nostrils. She can't make herself look back at the boys in the doorway, the orphans who pay the price for their father's unbending bravery. They suffer because their father chose an opponent worthy of him. Instead of shaking down noodle carts in night markets, he chose a true enemy, an implacable and relentless one. Kanya closes her eyes. I tried to tell you. You shouldn't have gone. I tried. She straps the box of belongings to her cycle's cargo rack and pedals across the compound. By the time she arrives at the main administrative building, she has recovered. General Proctor stands under the shade of a banana tree, smoking a gold leaf cigarette. She is surprised that she can meet the man's eyes. She approaches and wise. The general nods, accepting Kanya's greetings. You have his belongings. Kanya nods. And you've seen his sons. She nods again. He scowls. They piss in our house and our own doorstep. They leave his body. It should not be possible, yet here, within our ministry, they throw down their challenge. He grinds out the cigarette. You're in charge now, Captain Kanya. JD's men are yours. It's time that we fought as JD always wished. Make the trade ministry bleed, Captain. Get our face back.
It's time to go to war.
Pretty much. Also learned something new about Kanya.
She likes to drink.
With trade.
Mm-hmm.
Or used to.
Mm-hmm.
On the crumbling tower's precipice, Emiko stares north. She has done it every day since Relay confirmed the Windup land, ever since Anderson-sama hinted that it was possible. She cannot help herself, even when she lies in Anderson-sama's arms, even when he sometimes invites her to stay with him, paying her bar fines for days at a time. She cannot help dreaming of that place without patrons. North. She breathes deep, taking in the scents of the sea and burning dung and the bloom of orchid creepers. Down below, the wide delta of the Chao Phraya laps at Bangkok's levees and dikes. On the far side, Thornbury floats as best it can on bamboo rafts and stilt houses. The Temple of the Dawns, Prang, rises from the water, surrounded by the rubble of the drowned city. North. Shouts come from below, breaking her reverie. It takes a moment for her brain to translate the noise, filtering up, and then her mind shifts from Japanese to Thai. The sounds become words. The words become screams. Be quiet. Mao, no, 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 no. Down. Map long, diao ni, on your face. Please, please, please. Get down. She cocks her head, listening to the altercation. She has good hearing, another thing the scientists gave her with her smooth skin and her dog-like urge to obey. She listens. More screams. The thud of footsteps and something breaking. Her nape prickles. She wears nothing but slim pants and a string halter. Her other clothing lies below, awaiting her to change into street clothes. More shouts filter up. The scream of someone in pain. Primal animal pain. White shirts. A raid. Adrenaline surges through her. She has to get off the roof before they arrive. Emiko turns and runs for the stairs, but stops short at the stairwell. The tramp of feet echoes up. Squad 3, clear! Wing clear! Secure! She shoves the door closed and presses her back to it. Trapped. Already, they clog the stairwells. She casts about the rooftop, looking for another escape route. Check the roof! Emiko sprints for the edge of the tower. 30 feet below, the first of the tower's balconies extends. A penthouse balcony from a time when the tower must have been luxurious. She stares down at the tiny balcony, dizzy. Below it, there is nothing but the plunge to the street and the people who fill it like black spider mites. Wind gusts, tugging her towards the edge. Emiko sways and barely catches her balance. It's as if the spirits of the air are trying to kill her. She stares down at the balcony. No, it's impossible. She turns and runs back to the door, searching for something to wedge it shut. Chips of brick and tile litter the rooftop along with the clothing draped on drying lines, but nothing. She spies a piece of old broom, scrambles for it, and jams it against the door frame. The door's hinges are so rusted that it sags with the pressure she applies. She shoves the broom handle tighter against it, grimacing. The weatherall of the broom is stronger than the metal of the door. Emiko casts about for another solution. She's already boiling from running back and forth like a frantic rat. The sun is a thick red ball, sinking for the horizon. Long shadows stretch across the broken surface of the building's roof. She turns in a panicked circle. Her eyes fall on the clothing and the lines. Perhaps she can use a rope to climb down. She runs to the clotheslines and tries to yank one off, but it's tough and well tied. It won't come free. She yanks again. Behind her, the door shudders. A voice on the other side curses, "Open up!" The door jumps in its frame as someone slams against it, trying to force past the improvised brace. Inexplicably, she hears Gendo-sama in her head, telling her she is perfect, optimal, delightful. She grimaces at the old bastard's voice as she yanks again on the line. Hating him, hating the old snake who loved her and discarded her. The line cuts into her hands but refuses to give way. Gendo-sama, such a traitor. She will die because she is optimal, but not optimal enough for a return ticket. I'm burning up. Optimal. Another thud from behind her. The door cracks. She gives up on the line, turns in another circle, searching desperately for a solution. There's nothing except rubble and the open air all around. She might as well be 1,000 miles high. Optimally high. A hinge shatters, throwing bits of metal. The door sags. With a final glance at the door, Emiko sprints again for the edge of the building, still hoping for a solution, a way to climb down. She stops, windmilling at the edge. The precipice yawns. The precipice yawns. The wind gusts. There is nothing. No handholds. No way to climb down. She looks back at the clotheslines. If only... And the door breaks open from its hinges. A pair of white shirts spill through, stumbling, waving spring guns. They catch sight of her and charge across the roof. You! Come here! She peers over the edge. People are dots far below. The balcony is as small as a postage envelope. Stop! You jiao nie! Halt! The white shirts are running for her, running full bore, and yet, somehow, strangely, They suddenly seem slow. Slow as honey on a cold day. Emiko watches them, puzzled. They are halfway across the roof, but they are very, very slow. They seem to be running through rice porridge. Their every motion drags. So slow. As slow as the man who chased her in the alleys and tried to knife her. So slow. Emiko smiles. Optimal. She steps up onto the roof ledge. The white shirts' mouths open to shout again. Their spring guns rise, seeking her. Emiko watches their slit barrels zero in on her, wonders absently if perhaps she is actually the slow one, if gravity itself will be too slow. The wind gusts around her, beckoning. The spirits of the air tug at her, blow the black net of her hair across her eyes. She pushes it aside, smiles calmly at the white shirts, still running, still pointing their spring guns, and steps backward into the open air. The white shirts' eyes widen, their guns glint red. Discs spit towards her. 1, 2, 3. She counts them as they fly. 4, 5. Gravity yanks her down. The men and their projectiles disappear. She smashes into the balcony. Her knees slam into her chin. Her ankle twists as metal shrieks. She rolls, crashing into the balcony's railing. It shatters and peels away, and she plunges into the open air. Emiko grabs for a broken copper balustrade as she goes over, yanks to a stop, dangling above an abyss. Empty air yawns all around, beckoning free fall. Hot wind gusts, tugs at her. Emiko pulls herself up to the listing balcony, gasping. Her whole body is shaking, feels bruised, and yet all her limbs still work. She's not broken. She has not broken a single bone in the fall. Optimal. She swings her leg. Optimal. She swings her leg up onto the balcony and hauls herself to safety. Metal grinds. The balcony sags under her weight, its ancient bolts loosening. She's burning up. She wants to collapse, to let herself slide from the precarious edge and pour into the open air. Shouts from above. Emiko looks up. The white shirts peer over the edge, aiming their spring guns at her. Discs pour down like silver rain. They ricochet, slash her skin, spark on metal. Fear gives her strength. She lunges for the safety of the balcony. Glass doors. Optimal. The doors shatter. Glass slices her palms. Sparkling shards envelop her, and then she's through. The glass and in the apartment, and she's running fast, blurringly fast. People are staring at her, shocked and possibly slow. Frozen. Emiko smashes through another door and out into the hall. White shirts surround her. She plunges through them. Their surprised shouts are leaden as she streaks past, down the stairwells, down the stairs, leaving white shirts far behind. Shouts from high above. Her blood is on fire. The stairwells burn. She stumbles, leans against a wall. Even the heat of the concrete is better than her skin. She's becoming dizzy, but still she stumbles on. Men shout from above, chasing after her. Their boots thump on the stairs. Around and around she goes. She shoves through, obstructing knots of people, jams herself against dwellers, rousted by the raid. She is delirious with the furnace inside her. Tiny beads of sweat speckle her skin, forcing their way through her absurdly designed pores. But in the heat and humidity, it does nothing to cool her. She has never felt moisture on her skin before. Always she is dry. She brushes against a man. He recoils in surprise from her blazing skin. She's burning up. She cannot blend again amongst these people. Her limbs move like the flash frame pages of a child's animation book. Fast, 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 but choppy. Everyone is staring. She turns from the stairwell and jams through a door, stumbles down a hall, leans against a wall, panting. She can hardly keep her eyes open with the fire that burns within. I jumped, she thinks. I jumped. Adrenaline and shock. Cocktail terror, giddy amphetamine high. She's shaking, a wind-up's jitters. She's boiling, faint from the heat. She presses herself against the wall, trying to absorb its cold. I need water. Ice. Yumiko tries to control her breathing, to listen, to know where the exterminators come from. But her mind is dizzy and clouded. How far down is she? How many flights? Keep moving, keep moving. Keep going. Instead, she collapses. The floor is cool. Her breath sawls in and out of her lungs. Her halter is torn. There's blood on her arms and hands where she went through the glass. She stretches out, fingers wide, palms pressed to tile, trying to absorb the coolness of the floor. Her eyes close. Get up! But she can't. She tries to control her beating heart and listen for her pursuers, but she can barely breathe. She's so hot, and the floor is so cool. Hands seize her. Voices exclaim and drop her. Grab her again. Then the white shirts are all around, dragging her down the stairs. And she's grateful, thankful that they're at least dragging her down and out into the blessed evening air, even as they scream at her and slap her. Their words wash over her. She can't understand any of it. It's all just sounds, dark and dizzy heat. They do not speak Japanese. They're not even civilized. None of them are optimal. Water splashes over her. She gags and chokes, another deluge in her mouth, her nose drowning her. People are shaking her. They yell into her face, slap her, ask questions, demand answers. They grab her hair and jam her face down into a bucket of water, trying to drown her, to punish her, to kill her, and all she can think of is, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because some scientist made her optimal, and in another minute, this slip of a wind-up girl that they shout and slap will be cool. Okay.
Okay. Making real progress today.
Yeah. Chapters are shorter now that everything is super
Everything's
fast.
happening. Yeah.
Excuse me. The white shirts are everywhere, inspecting passes, stalking through food markets, confiscating methane. It's taken hours for Hoksang to cross the city. Rumors say that all the Malay and Chinese have been interned in the yellow card towers, that they're about to be shipped south, back across the border to the mercy of the green headbands. Hoksang listens to every whisper as he scuttles through alleys on his way back to his cash and gems, sending native Mai ahead of him, using her local's accent to scout. By the time night falls, they are still far from his destination. Spring Life's stolen money weighs heavy on him. At times he fears that Mai will simply turn on him and report him to the white shirts in return for a share of the cash he carries. At other times, he mistakes her for a daughter mouth and wishes he could protect her from everything that is coming. I'm going mad, he thinks, to mistake some silly Thai girl for my own. And yet still he trusts this slight girl, the child of fish farmers who previously proved so obedient when he still had a scrap of managerial authority, and who he prays will not turn on him now that he is a target. Darkness falls completely. Why are you so frightened? I asks. Hoksang shrugs. She cannot understand the complexity swirling around them. For her, it is a game. Frightening to be sure, but still a game. When the brown people turn on the yellow people in Malaya, it was like this. All at once. Everything was different. The religious fanatics came with their green headbands and their machetes. He shrugs. The more careful we are, the better. He peers out into the street from their hiding place and ducks back. A white shirt is pasting up another image of the tiger of Bangkok, edged in black. J.D. Chuchai. How quickly he falls from grace, then rises like a bird to sainthood. Hoksang grimaces. A lesson of politics. The white shirt moves on. Hoksang scans the street again. People are starting to come out, encouraged by the relative cool of the evening. They walk through the humid darkness, coming out to do their shopping, to find a meal, to locate a favorite somtam cart. White shirts glow green under approved burn methane. They move in teams, hunting like jackals for wounded meat. Small shrines to JD have appeared before storefronts and homes, his image surrounded by flickering candles and draped with marigolds, displaying solidarity and begging for protection against the white shirt rage. Accusations fill the airwaves of national radio. General Praksha speaks of the need to protect the kingdom from those, carefully unnamed, who would topple it. His voice cackles over the people, tiny from hand-cranked radios, vendors and housewives, beggars and children. The green of the methane lamps turns skin shimmery, a carnival. But amongst the rustle of the sarongs and fasin and the crank of red and gold megadont handlers, there are always the white shirts, hard eyes looking for an excuse to vent the rage. Go on, Hoksang prods Maya forward. See if it is safe. A minute later, Maya's back, motioning for him, and they are off again, threading through the crowds. Knots of silence. Excuse me. And they are threading through the crowds. Knots of silence warn them when new white shirts are near. Fear sending laughing lovers silent. The children running. Heads duck low as white shirts passed. Hoksang and Mai work their way past a night market. His eyes rove over candles, frying noodles, Cheshire shimmers. A shout rises ahead of them. Mai darts forward, scouting. She's back a moment later, tugging at his hand. Kun, come quickly. They're distracted. And then they're slipping past a cloud of white shirts and the object of their abuse. An old woman lies beside her cart, her daughter at her side, clutching a shattered knee. A crowd has gathered as the daughter struggles to drag her mother upright. All around, the glass cases that held their ingredients are shattered. Shards of glitter in the chili sauce, amongst bean sprouts on lime like diamonds under the green light of methane. The white shirts stir through the woman's ingredients with their batons. Come, Auntie. There must be some more money here. You thought you could bribe white shirts, but you haven't done nearly enough to burn untaxed fuel. Why are you doing this? The daughter cries. What have we done to you? The white shirt studies her coldly. You took us for granted. His baton crashes down on her mother's knee again. The woman shrieks and the daughter cowers. The white shirt calls to his men. Put their methane tank in with the rest. We have 3 more streets to go. He turns to the watching, silent crowd. Hawksang freezes as the officer's eyes travel across him. Don't run. Don't panic. You can pass as long as you don't speak. The white shirt smiles at the watching people. Tell your friends what you see here. We are not dogs you feed with scraps. We are tigers. Fear us. And then he raises his baton, and the crowd scatters. Hawksang and Mai with them. A block later, Hawksang leans against a wall, panting with the effort of their flight. The city has grown monstrous. Every street holds a hazard now. Down the alley, a hand-cranked radio crackles with more news. The docks and factories have been shut down. Access to the waterfront is restricted to those with permits. Hawksang suppresses a shiver. It's happening again. The walls are going up, and he is stuck inside the city, a rat in a trap. He fights down panic. He planned for this. There are contingencies, but first he has to make it home. Bangkok is not Malacca. This time you are prepared. Eventually, the familiar shacks and smells of the Yawarat slums surround them. They slip through tight squeezeways, past the people who do not know him. He forces down another rush of fear. If the white shirts have influenced the slum's godfathers, he could be in danger. He forces the thought away, drags open the door to his hovel, guides Mai inside. You did well. He digs in his bag and hands her another bundle of the stolen money. If you want more, come back to me tomorrow. She stares at the wealth he has so casually handed her. If he were smart, he would strangle her and reduce chances that she will turn on him for the rest of his savings. He forces down the thought. She has been loyal. He must trust someone. And she is Thai, which is useful when yellow cards are suddenly as disposable as Cheshires. She takes the money and stuffs it into a pocket. You can find your way home from here, he asks. She grins. I'm not a yellow card. I don't have anything to fear. Hawksang makes himself smile in return, thinking that she does not know how little anyone cares to separate wheat from chaff, when all anyone wants to do is burn a field. Alright, one more drink. Let me see how long this chapter is. Well, it's a little longer. And yes, everything is going crazy. Alright. Chapter 23. Goddamn General Prakcha and his goddamn white shirts. Carlyle pounds the railing of the apartment. He's unshaven and unbathed. He hasn't been back to the Victory in a week. Thanks to the lockdown of the Ferang district, his clothing is beginning to show the wear of the tropics. They've got the anchor pads locked down. They've got the locks closed. Banned access to the piers. He turns and comes back inside. Pours himself a drink. Fucking white shirts. Anderson can't help smiling at Carlyle's irritation. I warned you about poking cobras. Carlyle scowls. It wasn't me. Someone in trade had the bright idea and went too far. Fucking JD, he fumes. They should have known better. Was it Akarat? He's not that stupid. It doesn't matter, I suppose. Anderson toasts him with warm scotch. A week of lockdown, and it looks like the white shirts are just getting started. Carlisle glowers. Don't look so satisfied. I know you're hurting too. Anderson sips. Honestly, I can't say that I care. The factory was useful. Now it's not. He leans forward. Now I want to know if Akarat has truly done as much groundwork as you claimed. He nods toward the city, because it's looking like he's overstretched. And you think that's funny? I think that if he's isolated, he needs friends. I want to reach out to him again, offer him our sincere support in this crisis. You've got a better offer than the one that had him threatening to have you trampled. The price is the same. The gift is the same. Anderson sips again. But maybe Akarat is willing to listen to reason now. Carlisle stares out at the green glow of methane lamps. Grimaces. I'm losing money every day. I thought you had leverage with your pumps. Stop smirking, Carlisle scowls. You can't even threaten these bastards. They won't take messengers. Henderson smiles slightly. Well, I don't feel like waiting until monsoons for the white shirts to come to their senses. Set up a meeting with Akarat. We can offer him all the help he needs. You don't think you'll just swim out to Angrit and lead the revolution back in? With what? A couple clerks and shipping captains? Maybe some junior trade rep who sits out there drinking all day and hoping the kingdom will have a famine and drop its embargoes? Pretty threatening. Anderson smiles. If we come, we'll come from Burma, and no one else will notice until it's too late. He holds Carlisle's eyes until the man looks away. Same terms? Carlisle asks. You're not changing anything. Access to the Thai seed bank and a man named Gibbons. That's all. And you'll give what? What does Akarat need? Money for bribes? Gold? Diamonds? Jade? He pauses. Shock troops? Christ, you're serious about the Burma thing. Anderson waves his glass toward the night beyond. My cover here is blown. I accept that and move forward, and I pack up and head back to Des Moines with my tail between my legs. I accept that and move forward, or I pack up and head back to Des Moines with my tail between my legs. Let's be honest. Agragen has always played for keeps. Ever since Vincent Hu in Shitra Delessa started the company. We're not afraid of a little mess. Like Finland? Anderson smiles. I'm hoping for a better return on investment this time. Carlisle grimaces. Christ, all right. I'll set up the meeting, but you better remember me when this is over. Agragen always remembers its friends. He ushers Carlisle out the door and closes it behind him. Thoughtful. It's interesting to see what crisis brings out in a man. Carlisle, always so cocky and confident, now harried by the realization that he stands out as if he were painted blue. That the white shirts could begin interning Farang or executing them at any time, and no one would mourn. Suddenly, Carlisle's confidence is stripped away, like a used filter mask. Anderson goes back to the balcony and stares out at the darkness to the waters far beyond, to the island of Angrit and the powers that wait so patiently at the kingdom's edge. Almost time. So, Anderson's setting out the same offer to Akarat again. Now that they need it more.
Big
Where
time.
are we at? Oh, break time? Okay. Break time.
Mm-hmm.
Stay tuned to see what shenanigans and bloodletting and crazy what the hell is happening is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shenanigans.
Yeah. I'm gonna go finish my food.
Finish your food. We'll be back in 5, everybody. Get up and stretch.
Be right back.
All right, everyone, we're back.
Yes,
Thanks for
we
waiting.
are. All right, let's get back to it. Chapter 24. Amid the wreckage of white shirt reprisals, Kanya sits, sipping coffee. In the far corner of the noodle shop, a few patrons squat sullenly, listening to a Muay Thai match on a hand-cranked radio. Kanya, monopolizing the customer bench, ignores them. No one dares to sit beside her. Before, they might have hazarded the companionship, but now the white shirts have shown their teeth, and she sits alone. Her men have already proceeded ahead of her, ravening like jackals, cleaning out old history and bad alliances, starting fresh. Sweat trickles off the owner's chin as he leans over steaming bowls of rice noodles. Water beads on his face, glinting blue in the flare of illegal methane. He doesn't look at Kanya. Probably rused the day he decided to buy fuel on the black market. The radio's tiny crackle and the faint shout of the Lumfini crowds competes with the burn of the walk-in as he boils send me for soup. None of the listeners look at her. Kanya sips her coffee and smiles grimly. Violence, they understand. A soft environment ministry they ignored or scoffed at. But this ministry, one with its baton swinging and spring guns ready to cut a body down, elicits a different response. How many illegal burn stands has she already trashed? Ones just like this one. Ones where some poor coffee or noodle man couldn't afford the kingdom's taxed and sanctioned methane. Hundreds, she supposes. Methane is expensive. Bribes are cheaper. And if black market fuel lacked the additives that turned the methane a safe shaded green, well, that was a risk they all took willingly. We were so easy to bribe. Kanya pulls out a cigarette and lights it on the damning blue flame under the man's walk. He doesn't stop her. Acts as though she doesn't exist. A comfortable fiction for both of them. She's not a white shirt sitting at his illegal burn stand. He is not a yellow card that she could throw into the towers to sweat and die with his countrymen. She draws on her cigarette, thoughtful. Even if he doesn't show his fear, she knows his feelings. Remembers when the white shirts came to her own village. They filled her aunt's fish ponds with lye and salt and burned her poultry in slaughter piles. You're lucky, yellow card. When the white shirts came for us, they didn't care about preserving anything at all. They came with their torches, and they burned and burned. You'll get better treatment than we did. The memory of those sooty, pale men, demon-eyed behind a biohazard mask, makes her want to cower even now. They came at night. There was no warning. Her neighbors and cousins fled naked and screaming ahead of the torches. Behind them, their stilt houses erupted in flames, bamboo and palm, roaring orange and alive in the blackness. Ash swirled around them, scalding skin, sending everyone coughing and retching. She still carries scars from that burning. Pale socks where flakes of burning palm landed, hot and permanent, on her thin, childish arms. How she hated the white shirts. She and her cousins had huddled together, watching it all in terror as the Environment Ministry razed their village, and she had hated them all, and hated them with all her heart. And now she marshals her own troops to do the same. JD would appreciate the irony. In the distance, shouts of fear rise up like smoke as black and oily as farmers' hovels burning. Kanya sniffs. It's nostalgic in a way. The smoke is the same. She draws again on her cigarette, exhales, wonders if her men have gotten ahead of themselves. A fire in these weatherall slums would be problematic. The oils that keep the wood from rotting ignite easily in the heat. She takes another puff of her cigarette. Nothing she can do about it now. Perhaps it is only an officer torching illegally scavenged scrap. She reaches out to sip her coffee and eyes the bruise on the cheek of the man who serves her. If the Environment Ministry had anything to say about it, all these yellow card refugees would be on the other side of the border. A Malayan problem. The problem of another sovereign country, not a problem for the kingdom at all. But Her Royal Majesty the Child Queen is merciful, compassionate in a way Kanya is not. Kanya snuffs her cigarette. It's a good tobacco, gold leaf, local engineering, better than anyone else in the kingdom. She pulls another cigarette from its switch glass cellophane box, lights it on the blue flame. The yellow card keeps his expression polite as Kanya motions for him to pour more sweet coffee. The radio crackles with the stadium's cheers, and the men huddling around it all cheer as well, momentarily forgetting the white shirt nearby. The footsteps are almost silent, timed with the sound of pleasure, but the yellow card's expression gives the arrival away. Kanya doesn't look up. She motions for the man standing behind to join her. Either kill me or sit down, she says. A low chuckle. The man sits. Narong wears a loose black high-collar shirt and gray trousers, tidy clothes. He could work as a clerk, perhaps, except for his blue eyes. His eyes are too alert, and his body is too relaxed. There is an easy confidence to him, an arrogance that has difficulty fitting into his clothes. Some people are simply too powerful to pretend a lower status. It made him stand out at the anchor pads as well. She bottles her anger, waits without speaking. You like the silk? He touches his shirt. It's Japanese. They still have silkworms. She shrugs. I don't like anything about you, Narong. He smiles at that. Come now, Kanya. Here you are, promoted to captain, and not a single smile in you. He motions to the yellow card for coffee. They watch the rich brown liquid splash into a glass. The yellow card sets a bowl of soup down before Kanya, fish balls and lemongrass and chicken stock. She starts fishing out the Utex noodles. Narong sits patiently. You asked for this meeting, he says finally. Did you kill Shae? Narong straightens. You always lacked social grace, even after all these years in the city and all the money we've given to you. You might as well be a Mekong fish farmer. Kanya looks at him coldly. If she's honest with herself, he frightens her, but she won't let that show. Behind her, another cheer from the radio. You're the same as Pracha. You're all disgusting, she says. You didn't think so when we came to you, a very small and vulnerable girl, and invited you to Bangkok. You didn't think so when we supported your aunt through the rest of her years. You didn't think so when we offered you an opportunity to strike at General Pracha and the white shirts. There are limits. Shae did nothing. Narong is still as a spider regarding her. Finally, he says, JD overstepped himself. You even warned him. Be careful that you don't dive down the cobra's throat yourself. Kanya starts to speak, then closes her mouth. Starts again, keeping her voice under control. Will you do the same to me as you did to JD? Kanya, how long have I known you? Narong smiles. How long have I cared for your family? You are a valued daughter. He slides a thick envelope across to her. I would never hurt you, he says. We are not like Praksha. Narang pauses. How is the loss of the tiger affecting the department? Look around you. Kanya jerks her head towards the sounds of conflict. The general is enraged. JD was almost a brother to him. I hear he wants to come after trade directly, maybe even burn the ministry to the ground. Of course he wants to go after trade. Without trade, our problems would be halved. Narong shrugs. The envelope sits between them. It might as well be JD's heart lying on the counter. The return of her long-ago investment in revenge. I'm sorry, JD. I tried to warn you. She takes the envelope, empties the money, and stuffs it into a belt pouch as Narong looks on. Even the man's smiles are sharp with cutting edges. His hair is slicked back on his head, sleek. He is both entirely still and entirely terrifying. And this is the sort you consort with, mutters. And this is... Oops. There we go. And this is the sort you consort with, mutters a voice inside her head. Kanya jerks at the voice. It sounds like JD. It has the telltales of JD, his humor and his relentlessness. The hint of laughter along with judgment. JD never lost his sense of Sanuk. I'm not your kind, Kanya thinks. Again, the grin and chuckle. I knew that. Why didn't you simply kill me if you knew? The voice is silent. The sound of Muay Thai match continues to crackle behind him. Sharawin and Sakta, a good match, but either Sharawin has radically improved or Sakta has been paid to fail. Kanya's bet will be a losing one. The match reeks of interference. Perhaps the Dung Lord has taken an interest in the fight. Kanya makes a face of irritation. Bad match? Narong asks. I always bet on the wrong man. Narong laughs. That's why it's so helpful to have information ahead of time. He hands her a scrap of paper. Kanya looks through the names on the list. These are Praksha's friends, generals, some of them. They're protected by him as the cobra sheltered the Buddha. Narong grins. That's why they will be so surprised when he suddenly turns on them. Hit them. Make them hurt. Let them know that the Environment Ministry is not to be trifled with. That the Ministry views all infractions equally. No more favoritism. No more friendships and easy deals. Show them that this new Environment Ministry is unbending. You're trying to drive a wedge between Praksha and his allies. Make them angry at him. Narong shrugs. Doesn't say anything. Kanya finishes her noodles. When no other instructions seem to be forthcoming, she stands. I must go. I can't have my men see you with me. Narong nods, dismissing her. Kanya stalks out of the coffee shop, followed by new groans of disappointment from the radio listeners as Sakta is cowed by Sharawin's newfound ferocity. On the street corner, under a green glow of methane, Kanya straightens her uniform. There's a blotchy stain on her jacket, residue of the destruction she has wreaked tonight. She frowns with distaste, brushes at it, again opens the list that Naram gave her, memorizing the names. The men and women are General Pracha's closest friends, and they will now be enforced against as vigorously as the yellow cards in their towers, as vigorously as General Pracha once enforced against a small village in the northeast, leaving starving families and burning homes behind him. Difficult, but for once, fair. Kanya crumples the list in her hand. This is the shape of our world, she thinks. Tit for tat until we're all dead and Cheshires lap at our blood. She wonders if it was really better in the past, if there really was a golden age fueled by petroleum and technology, a time when every solution to a problem didn't endanger another. She wants to curse those Varang who came before, the calorie men with their active labs and their carefully cultured crotch tames that would feed the world. They're modified animals that would work so much more efficiently on fewer calories. The Agrigens and pure cows who claimed that they were happy to feed the world, to export their patented grains, and then always found a way to delay. JD, she thinks, I am sorry, so sorry, for everything I have done to you and yours. I did not set out to hurt you. If I had known how much it would cost to balance against Pracha's greed, I would never have come to Krumthep. Instead of going after her men, she makes her way to a temple. It is small, a neighborhood shrine more than anything. Only a few monks in attendance. A young boy kneels before the glittering Buddha image with his grandmother, but otherwise the place is empty. Kanya buys some incense from the vendor at the gate and goes inside. She lights the incense and kneels, holds the burning sticks to her forehead, raises them 3 times in the triple gem, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. She prays. How many evils has she committed? How much bad karma must she atone for? Was it more important to honor Akarat and his promises of balancing of the scales, or was it more important to honor her adoptive father, JD? A man comes to your village with a promise of food in your belly, a life in the city, and money for your aunt's cough and your uncle's whiskey. And he doesn't even want to buy your body. What else can one wish for? What else could buy loyalty? Everyone needs a patron. May you have much better friends in your next life, loyal fighter. JD, I'm so sorry. I am sorry. May I wander as a ghost for 1,000,000 years to make atonement. May you be reborn in a better place than this. She stands and makes a final way to the Buddha, and goes out of the temple on the steps. She looks up at the stars. She wonders how it is that her karma has so destroyed her. She closes her eyes, fighting back tears. In the distance, a building explodes in flame. She has over 100 men working this district, letting everyone feel the pain of real enforcement. Laws are a fine thing on paper, but painful when no bribery can ease their bind. People have forgotten this. Suddenly, she feels tired. She turns away from the carnage. She has had enough blood and soot on her hands for one night. Her men know their work. Home is not far. Mid-chapter, 1 second. Okie dokie. Let me put my hair back. Make this easier. It is just a bit too long. That's better. Captain Kanya! Kanya opens her eyes to dawn light filtering into her home. For a moment, she is too groggy to remember anything about the days, about her position. Captain! The voice is calling in through her screened window. Kanya pulls herself out of bed and goes to the door. Yes? She calls through. What is it? You're wanted at the ministry. Kanya opens the door and takes an envelope from the man, unbinds the seal. This is from the quarantine department, she says, surprised. He nods. It was a volunteer duty that Captain J.D. had. He trails off, with everyone working. General Pracha asked. He hesitates. Kanya nods. Yes, of course. Her skin crawls, remembering J.D.'s stories of the wars against early strains of syphilis. How he worked with his heart in his throat alongside his men, all of them wondering who would die before the week was done. All of them in a terror of sickness and a sweat of work as they burned whole villages, homes and watts, and Buddha images all going up in smoke while monks chanted and called spirits to their aid, and people all around them lay on the ground and died, gagging on fluids as their lungs ruptured. The quarantine department. She reads the message, nods sharply to the boy. Yes, I see. Any return? No. She sets the envelope on her side table. A scorpion crouched. This is all I need. The messenger salutes and runs down the steps to his bicycle. Kanya closes the door, thoughtful. The envelope hints at horrors. Perhaps this is her karma. Retribution. In a short time, she is on her way to the ministry, cycling through leafy streets, crossing canals, coasting down city boulevards built for 5 lanes of petroleum-burning cars and now carry herds of megadons. At the quarantine department, she endures a second security check before she is allowed to enter the complex. Computer and climate fans hum relentlessly. The whole building seems to vibrate with the energy burning within. More than 3/4 of the ministry's carbon allocation goes to this single building. The brain of the quarantine department that evaluates and predicts the shifts in genetic architecture that necessitate a ministry response. Behind glass walls, LEDs on servers wink red and green, burning energy, drowning Krungthep, even as they save it. She walks down the halls, past a series of rooms where scientists sit before giant computer screens and study genetic models on the brightly glowing displays. Kanya imagines that she can feel the air combusting with all the energy being burned, all the coal being consumed to keep the single building running. There are stories of the raids that were necessary to create the quarantine department, of the strange marriages that gave them footholds in these technologies. Farang brought across at great expense foreign experts used to transfer the viruses of their knowledge, the invasive concepts of their gene-ripped criminality to the kingdom. The knowledge needed to preserve the Thai and keep them safe in the face of plagues. It's like everyone hates each other but needs each other.
Delicate balances.
Yep. Some of these people are famous now, as important in folklore as Ajan Khan in Charts Korbjidi and Sweb Nakhasethian. Some of them have become bodhis in their own right, merciful spirits dedicated to the salvation of an entire kingdom. She passes through a courtyard, In the corner of a small spirit house sits housing miniature statues of teacher Laji, looking like a small wizened sadhu in the Agrajan, Saint Sarah, the twinned Bodhis, male and female, the calorie bandit and the gene ripper, the thief and the builder. There are only a few incense sticks burning, the usual plate of breakfast, and garlands of marigolds that are always strung. When the plagues are bad, the place seethes with prayers as scientists struggle to find a solution. Even our prayers are to Farang, Kanya thinks. A Farang antidote for a Farang plague. Take any tool you can find. Make it your own. Take any tool you can find. Make it your own, JD said in past times, explaining why they consorted with the worst, why they bribed and stole and encouraged monsters like Jibu-sen. A machete doesn't care who wields it or who made it. Take the knife, and it will cut. Take the farang if they will be a tool in your hand, and if it turns on you, melt it down. You will have at least the raw materials. Take any tool. He was always practical, but it hurts. They hunt and beg for scraps of knowledge from abroad, scavenge like Cheshires for survival. So much knowledge sits inside the Midwest Compact. When a promising genetic thinker arises somewhere in the world, they are cowed and bullied and bribed to work for the other best and highest and brightest in Des Moines or Changsha. It takes a strong research to resist Pure Cal or Agragen or Red Star. And even if they do stand up to the calorie companies, what does the kingdom offer them? Even their best computers are generations behind those of the calorie companies. Kanya shakes off the thought. We are alive. We are alive when whole kingdoms and countries are gone. When Malaya is a morass of killing, when Kowloon is underwater, when China is split and the Vietnamese are broken, and Burma is nothing but starvation. The Empire of America is no more. The Union of the Europeans splintered and fractionalized, and yet we endure, even expand. The kingdom survives. Thanks to the Buddha that he extends a compassionate hand, and that our queen has enough merit to attract these terrifying farang tools, without which we would be completely defenseless. She reaches a final checkpoint, endures another inspection of her papers. Doors slide aside, and then she is invited into an electric elevator. She feels the air sucked in with her, negative pressure, and then the doors close. Kanya plunges into the earth as though she is falling into hell. She thinks of the hungry ghosts that populate this awful facility, the spirits of the dead who sacrifice themselves to leash the demons of the world. Her skin prickles. Down, down. The elevator's doors open. A white hall and an airlock. Out of her clothes into a shower heavy with chlorine. Out on the other side, a boy offers her lab clothes and reconfirms her identification from a list. He informs her she won't need secondary containment procedures and then leads Kanya down the halls. The scientists here carry the haunted looks of people who know they are under siege. They know that beyond the few doors, all manner of apocalyptic terrors wait to swallow them. If Kanya thinks about it, her bowels go watery. That was JD's strength. He had faith in his past lives and future ones. Kanya, though, she will be reborn to die of sibisosis a dozen times before she is allowed to progress once more. Kama. You should have considered that before you gave me up to them, JD says. Kanya stumbles at his voice. JD is trailing a few paces behind her. Kanya gasps and presses her back against a wall. JD cocks his head, studying her. Kanya can't breathe. Will he simply strangle her here to pay her back for her betrayals? Her guide stops. Are you sick? He asks. JD is gone. Kanya's heart is pounding. She's sweating. If she were any further into containment, she would have to ask to be quarantined, begged not to let out, to accept that some bacteria or virus made the jump, and that she was going to die. She gags, remembering the blood on the steps of General Praksha's administrative building, JD's dismembered body, a careful, brutal package, ragged to death. Do you need a doctor? Kanya tries to control her breathing. JD is haunting her, his fee following her. She tries to control her fear. I'm fine. She nods to the guide. Let's go. Finish this now. A minute later, the guide indicates the door and nods that Kanya should step through. As Kanya opens the door, Ratana looks up from her files, smiles slightly in the glow of her monitor. The computers down here all have large screens. Some of them are models that haven't existed in 50 years and burn more energy than 5 new ones. But they do their work, and in turn are meticulously maintained. Still, the amount of power burning through them makes Kanya weak in the knees. She can almost see the ocean rising in response. It's a horrifying thing to stand beside. Thank you for coming, Ratana says. Of course I came. No mention of earlier trysts, no mention of shared history gone awry. That Kanya could not play Tom and Dee with one she would inevitably betray. That was too much hypocrisy, even for Kanya. And yet, Ratana is still beautiful. Kanya remembers laughing with her, taking a skiff out across Chao Phraya, and watching paper boats flowing all around them during Louis Creton. Remembers the feel of Ratana curled against her as the waves lapped, and as thousands of little candles burned. The city's wishes and prayers blanketing the water. Ratana motions her over, shows her a set of photos on her screen. She catches sight of Kanya's captain's tags on her white collar. I'm sorry about JD. He was good. Kanya grimaces, trying to shake off the memory of his fee in the halls outside. He was better than that. She studies the bodies that glow in front of her. What am I seeing? Oops. Nope. Right page. 2 men from 2 different hospitals. Yes? They had something in them, something worrisome. It seems to be a variant of blister rust. Yes, and they ate something tainted. They died? So? Ratana shakes her head. It was hosted in them, propagating. I've never seen it host itself in a mammal. Kanya looks over the hospital records. Who are they? We don't know. No family visited them. No one saw them arrive. They didn't say. One was coherent when he was admitted. The other was already deep into blisterous collapse. You're sure they didn't just eat tainted fruit? Ratana shrugs. Her skin is smooth and pale from a life underground. Not like Kanya, whose skin is darkened like a peasant's in the harsh sun of active patrol. And yet, Kanya would always choose to work above ground, not down here in the darkness. Ratana is the brave one, Kanya is sure of it. She wonders what personal demons have driven Ratana to work in this hellish place. When they were together, Ratana never talked about her past, about her losses. But they are there. They have to be, like rocks under the waves and froth of a coastline. There are always rocks. No. I'm not sure. Not 100%. 50%? She shrugs again, uncomfortable, goes back to her papers. No, I can't make assertions like that. But the virus is different. The protein alterations in their samples are variants. The breakdown of the tissue doesn't match the standard fingerprint of blister rust. In testing, it conforms to blister rust. We've seen before. Agrogen and total nutrients, AG1134S and TN249XD. Both of them offer strong similarities. She pauses. Yes? But it was in the lungs. Sibisosis, then? No, it was blister rust. Ratana looks at Kanya. You see the problem. And we know nothing about their history, their travel. Were they abroad, maybe, on a clipper ship, crossing into Burma, over into South China? They're not from the same village, perhaps? Ratana shrugs. We have no history for either of them, just the signets to link them. We used to have a population database with DNA records, family history, work, and housing, but they were taken offline to provide more processing power for the preemptive research. She shrugs. In any case, so few people were bothering to register, it didn't make any sense. So we have nothing. Any other cases? No. You mean not so far? This is beyond me here. We only noticed it because of the crackdowns. The hospitals are reporting everything far more than they normally do, not to show that they're compliant. It was an accident that they reported, and another that I noticed, it all on other reports that are coming in. We need Jibu Sin's help. Kanya's skin crawls. JD's dead. Jibu Sin won't help us now. Sometimes he takes an interest, not just in his own research. With this, it's possible. She looks up at Kanya, hopeful. You went to JD before. You saw him convince a man. Perhaps he will take an interest in you, too? You saw him convince the man. It's doubtful. Look at this. Ratana shuffles through the medical charts. It has the markings of an engineered virus. DNA shifts don't look like ones that would reproduce in the wild. Blister rust has no reason to jump the animal kingdom barrier. Nothing is encouraging it. It is not easily transferred. The differences are marked. It's as though we're looking into its future. At what it will be like after being reborn 10,000 times, it's a true puzzle and truly worrisome. If you're right, we're all dead. General Praksha will have to be briefed. The palace told. Quietly, Ratana begs. She reaches out, grasps Kanya's sleeve, her face anguished. I could still be wrong. You aren't. I don't know that it can jump or how readily. I want you to go to Jibu Sin. He will know. Kanya makes a face. All right, I'll try. In the meantime, put out word to the hospitals and street clinics to look out for more symptoms. Draw up a list. With everyone already worried about crackdowns, it won't even look suspicious for us to demand more information from them. They'll think we're just trying to keep them on their toes. That will tell us something, at least. There will be riots, if I'm right. It will be worse than that. Kanya turns for the door, feeling sick. When your tests are done and your data ready for him to examine, I'll meet your devil. She makes a face of distaste. You'll have your confirmations. Kanya. She turns. I'm truly sorry about JD, Ratana says. I know you were close. Kanya grimaces. He was a tiger. She pulls open the door, leaving Ratana to her demon's lair. An entire facility dedicated to the kingdom's survival. Kilowatts of power burning all day and all night, and none of it of any real use. Yay, we learned something new about Kanya.
Had a girlfriend.
She did. We also learn what happens when you make people use infected culture tanks.
Yep. They become the culture tanks.
Indeed. Anderson-sama appears without warning, sitting down on a bar stool beside her, ordering water with ice for her, and a whiskey for himself. He doesn't smile at her, hardly acknowledges her at all, but still Inako feels a rush of gratitude. For the last several days, she has hidden in the bar, waiting for the moment when the white shirts will decide to mulch her. She exists on sufferance and astronomical bribes, and now she knows as Raleigh looks at her that it is unlikely he will let her go. He has too much invested in her now to allow her departure. And then Anderson-sama appears, and for a moment she feels safe. Feels as though she is back in the arms of Gendo-sama. She knows it is her training that does this, and yet she cannot help it. She smiles when she sees him sitting beside her. Under the phosphorescent light of glowworms, his gaijin features so strange amongst the sea of ties and the few Japanese men who know of her existence. As is proper, he does not acknowledge her existence, but he stands and goes over to Raleigh, and she knows as soon as her performance is done that she will sleep safe tonight. For once since the crackdown, she will not live in fear of the white shirts. She is surprised when Raleigh comes over immediately. Looks like you're doing something right. The Farang wants to find you out early. No show tonight. Raleigh shrugs. He paid. Yumiko feels a rush of relief. She hurries to ready herself, and then she's slipping down the stairs. Raleigh has arranged that the white shirts will only come and raid at specific times, and so she has assurance that within the confines of Ploenshit, she can do as she likes. Nevertheless, she is cautious. There were 3 raids early on, before the new patterns were settled. The number of owners spat blood for a new detente was agreed upon. Not Raleigh, though. Raleigh seems to have a supernatural understanding of workings of the environment and bureaucracy. Outside Ploenshit, Anderson is waiting in his rickshaw, smelling of whiskey and tobacco, his face rough and with evening stubble. She leans against him. I hoped you would come. I'm sorry it took so long. Things are a bit unsettled for me. I missed you. She is surprised to find that it's true. They ease through the night traffic, past shambling shadow megadons and Cheshire flickers, past burning candles and sleeping families. They pass white shirt uniforms, patrolling, but the officers are busy checking a vegetable stall. The green illumination of gas lights flicker over them. Are you all right? He nods at the white shirts. Is the ministry raiding? It was bad at first, but now it's better. There was panic during the first raids, as the white shirts stormed up the stairwells, rousting Mama-san, shutting off pirate methane taps, swinging their batons, ladyboys screaming, owners rushing to find more cash, and then falling under the clubs when they failed to bribe their way free. Emiko had huddled amongst the other girls, still as a statue, as the white shirts stalked the bar, pointing out problems, threatening to beat them all until they couldn't earn. Not a trace of good humor in them, only anger at the loss of their tiger, only an urge to teach lessons to everyone who had ever laughed at white shirt rules. Terror, nearly pissing herself as she held still amongst the girls, sure that Kaneka would shove her out and reveal her, that she would choose this moment to effect Emiko's demise. Relay, performing careful obeisances to all of them, a farce for some of the regular takers of his bribes, some of them even looking directly at her. Sudapong and Adalek and Thanakshai, all of them fully aware of her and her role in the place, having gone so far as to sample her even, and all of them staring at her, trying to decide if they would discover her. Everyone playing their roles, and Emiko waiting for Kaneka to break the charade, to force everyone to look at the Windup Girl that had so lucrative a source for bribes. Emiko shivers at the memory. "It is better now," she says again. Anderson-sama nods. Their rickshaw stops in front of his building. He climbs down first, checks to ensure no white shirts are about, and ushers her inside. The paired security guards scrupulously ignore her existence. When she leaves, she will tip them to make sure they forget entirely. She may discuss them, but they will play along if she is respectful and if she pays. With the white shirts on edge, she will have to pay more, but it can be done. She and Anderson-sama enter the elevator, and the elevator woman calls out the estimated weight, her face carefully expressionless. Safely inside his flat, they come together. Emiko is surprised at how happy she is, that he delights in her, that he runs his hands over her skin, that he wishes to touch her. She has forgotten what it is to look almost human, to be nearly respected. In Japan, there was so much compunction about looking upon her, but here, she feels as if she is an animal every day. It is a relief to be loved, even if it is only for her physicality. His hands run over her breast, down across her stomach, slip between her legs, burrow deeper. She's relieved that it is easy, that he will know her pleasure. Emiko presses herself to him, and their mouths find one another, and for a time she forgets entirely that people call her Windup and Hichikichi. For a moment, she feels entirely human, and she loses herself in the touching in Anderson-sama's skin, in the security of pleasure and duty. But after their union, her depression returns. Anderson-sama brings her cool water, solicitous of her exertion. He lies down beside her, naked, careful not to touch, not to add to the heat she has built up. "What's the matter?" he asks. Emiko shrugs, tries to make herself into a smiling new person. "It is nothing that can be changed." It's almost impossible to speak her needs. It goes against all her nature. Mizumi-sensei would strike her for it. Anderson-sama watches her, his eyes surprisingly tender for a man with scars that crisscross his body. She can catalog those scars, each one a mystery of violence on his pale skin. Perhaps the puckered scars on his chest came from spring gun attacks. Perhaps the one on his shoulder came from a machete. The ones on his back look like whip marks, almost certainly. The only one she's certain about is the neck scar from his factory. He reaches out to touch her gently. "What's wrong?" Emiko rolls away from him. She can barely speak through her embarrassment. "The white shirts. They will never let me out of the city. And now Relay-san has paid more bribes to keep me. He will never let me go, I think." Anderson Sama doesn't respond. She can hear his breathing, slow and steady, but nothing else. Her shame is all-encompassing. Stupid, greedy wind-up girl. You should be grateful for what he is willing to provide. The silence stretches. Finally, Anderson Sama asks, "You're sure Raleigh can't be convinced? He's a businessman." Yumiko listens to the sound of his breathing. Is he offering to buy her free? If he were Japanese, it would be an offer, carefully couched, but with Anderson Sama, it's hard to tell. I do not know. Raleigh-san likes money, but I think also that he likes to see me suffer. She waits, straining for a clue as to what he's thinking. Anderson Sama doesn't ask for more information, leaves her hint dangling. She can feel his body, though, close to her, the heat of his skin. Is he listening still? If he were civilized, she would take this lack of response as a definitive slap, but gaijin are not subtle. Yumiko steels herself, presses again, almost gagging with humiliation as she overcomes her training in genetic imperatives, fighting to keep herself from cowering like a dog. She tries again. I'm living in the bar now. Raleigh-san pays the bribes to keep the white shirts away. Triple bribes now. Some to the other bars and some to the white shirts to allow me to be there. I do not know how much longer I can last. My niche is vanishing, I think. Do you? Anderson Sama breaks off, hesitating, then says, "You could stay here." Yumiko's heart skips. Raleigh-san would follow, I think. There are ways to handle people like Raleigh. You can free me from him? I doubt I have the funds to buy you out. Yumiko's heart crashes as Anderson Sama continues. With tension so high, I can't provoke him by just taking you away. Not when he could just send white shirts hunting here. It would be too risky. But I think I can arrange for you to sleep here at least. Raleigh might even appreciate the lessened exposure. But this would not create problems for you? The white shirts do not like furrying either. You are very precarious now. Help me fly from this place. Help me find the new people villages. Help me, please. That's in her head because of certain quotes. If I were to pay Raleigh-san's fines, I could go north. Anderson Sama tugs her shoulder gently. Yumiko lets herself be pulled back to him. You hope for too little, he says. His hand traces across her stomach, idle, thoughtful. A lot of things may be changing soon, maybe even for wind-ups. He favors her with a small, secretive smile. The white shirts and their rules won't be here forever. She is begging for survival, and he speaks of fantasy. Yumiko tries to keep her disappointment hidden. You should be content, greedy girl. Grateful for what you have, but she can't keep the bitterness from her voice. I am a wind-up. Nothing will change. We will always be despised. He laughs at that, pulls her close. Don't be so sure. His lips brush her ear, whispering conspiratorial. If you pray to that Bakaneko Cheshire god of yours, I might be able to give you something better than a village in the jungle. With a little luck, you might end up with a whole city. Yumiko pushes away, looks at him sadly. I understand if you cannot change my lot, but you should not tease me. Anderson Sama only laughs again. Aww. Where are we at? Half an hour left. Let's see. Oh gosh, that is a very short chapter. Also short. Yeah, I think I can do this. Okay. Chapter 26. Hawk Sang crouches in an alley just outside the Fereng manufacturing district. It's night, but still there are white shirts everywhere. Everywhere he goes, he finds cordons of uniforms. The quays, clipper ships sit isolated, waiting for permission to unload cargo. In the factory district, ministry officers stand on every corner, preventing access for workers and owners and shopkeepers alike. Only a few people are allowed in and out, ones who show residence cards, locals. With only a yellow card for identification, it took Hawk Sang half the evening to traverse the city, avoiding checkpoints. He misses Mai. Those young eyes and ears made him feel safe. Now he crouches with Cheshires, the stink of urine, watching white shirts check another man's identification and cursing that he is cut off from the Spring Life factory. He should have been brave. Should have simply robbed the safe when he had the chance. Should have risked everything. And now it's too late. But the white shirts own every inch of the city, and their favorite target is yellow cards. They like to test their batons on yellow card skulls, like to teach them lessons. If the Dung Lord didn't have so much influence, Hawk Sang is sure that the ones in the towers would already be slaughtered. The Environment Ministry sees yellow cards the same way it sees other invasive species and plagues it manages. Given a choice, the white shirts would slaughter every yellow card Chinese and then make a crab of apology for their overenthusiasm to the Child Queen, but only after the fact. A young woman shows her pass and clears the cordon. She disappears down the street. Deeper into the manufacturing district. Everything is so tantalizingly close, and yet so impossibly out of reach. Looked at objectively, it is probably best that factory is closed. Safer for everyone. If he weren't so dependent on the contents in the safe, he would just report the line's infections and be done with the guy side thing entirely. And yet, in the midst of all that illness, ensconced above the miasma of the algae baths, blueprints and specifications still beckon. Hawk Sang wants to tear out the last of his hair with frustration. He glares at the checkpoint, willing the white shirts to go away, to look somewhere else, wishing. Excuse me again. Gosh, one moment. Let me get a drink. There we go. And that should help. All right, back to where I was. He glares at the checkpoint, willing the white shirts to go away, to look somewhere else, wishing, praying to the goddess Kuan Yin, begging to fat Budai for a little luck. With those manufacturing plans and the support of the Dung Lord, so much would be possible. So much future, so much life. Offerings for his ancestors again, perhaps a wife, perhaps a son to carry on his name, perhaps. A patrol stalks past. Hawk Sang eases deeper into shadow. The officers remind him of when the green headbands began patrolling at night. They started out looking for couples holding hands in the evening, displaying immorality. At the time, he told his children to watch themselves. To understand that the tides of conservatism came and went as if they could not live as freely and openly as their parents had. Well, then what of it? Didn't they have food in their bellies and family and friends whose company they enjoyed? And within their high-walled compounds, it was irrelevant what the green headbands thought. Another patrol. Hoksang turns and slips back down the alley. There's no way to sneak into the manufacturing district. The white shirts are determined to shut down trade and hurt the Farang. He grimaces and begins the long, circuitous route back through the Suis toward his hovel. Others in the ministry were corrupt, but not J.D. Not if anyone is honest about the man. Even Sawati Krungthep, the whisper sheet which loved him most, and then denigrated him so completely during his disgrace, has printed pages and pages in praise of the hero of the country. Wow, fickle. Captain J.D. was too well loved to be cut into pieces, to be treated like offal that is dumped in methane composters. Someone must be punished. And if trade is to blame, then trade must be punished. So the factories are closed, along with the anchor pads and roads and docks, and Hoksang cannot squeeze out. He cannot book passage on Clipper, cannot ride upriver to the ruined Ayutthaya, cannot flee on a dirigible to Kolkata or Japan. He makes his way past docks, and sure enough, the white shirts are still there, along with small knots of workers squatting on the ground. Idled by the blockade, a beautiful clipper ship lies anchored 100 meters offshore, rocking gently in the water. As beautiful a clipper as he ever owned. Latest generation. Switch holes and hydrofoils, palm oil, polymer, wind wings, fast, capable of hauling plenty of cargo. It sits out there, gleaming, and he stands on the dock, staring at it. It might as well be docked in India. He spies a food cart, a vendor frying gene-ripped tilapia in a deep walk. Hoksang steels himself. He has to ask, even if it reveals himself as a yellow card. He's blind without information. With the white shirts at the other end of the dock, if this man calls out, he should still have time to flee. Hoksang eases close. Is there a way of passengers crossing? He murmurs, tilts his head towards the clipper. Over there. No transit for anyone, the vendor mutters. Not even a single man. The man scowls, nods at the others in the shadows, squatting and smoking cigarettes, playing cards, huddled around the hand-cranked radio of a shopkeeper. Those ones have been here for the last week. You'll have to wait, yellow card, just like everyone else. Hoksang fights the urge to flinch at being identified, forces himself to pretend as if they are all equals in this, to create a hopeful fiction that the man will see him as a person and not some unwelcome Cheshire. You haven't heard of small boats further down the coast, away from the city, for money? The fish vendor shakes his head. No one's going either way. They've caught two different groups of passengers trying to make their way ashore from the ships, too. The white shirts won't even allow a resupply boat to go out. They're betting on whether the captain will weigh anchor or the white shirts will open up first. What are the odds? Hoksang asks. I'll give you 11-1 the clipper leaves first. Hoksang makes a face. I don't think I'll risk it. 20-1 then. A few others seem to have been listening to the exchange. They laugh quietly. Don't bet unless he gives you 50-1, one of them says. The white shirts aren't going to bend. Not this time. Not with the tiger dead. Hoksang makes himself laugh with them. He pulls out a cigarette and lights it, offers more to the people around him. A small gift of goodwill for these ties, for this moment of shared brotherhood. If he were not a yellow card with a yellow card accent, he might even try a gifted... Whoops, I skipped a line. You might even try a gift of goodwill for the white shirts. Nope, no I didn't. But on a night like tonight, it will earn him nothing but a baton on the skull. He has no interest in seeing his head splintered against paving stones. He smokes and studies the blockade. Time is passing. The idea of a sealed city makes his hands shake. This isn't about yellow cards, he tells himself. We are not the reason for this. But he has a hard time believing a noose isn't tightening. It might be about trade right now, but there are too many yellow cards in the city, and if trade is cut off for long, even these friendly people will begin to notice the lack of work, and then they will drink, and then they will think of the yellow cards in the towers. The tiger is dead. His face is on every gaslight pole, pasted to every building. 3 images of J.D. fighting in a fighting pose stare out from a warehouse wall, even now. Hawk Sang smokes a cigarette and scowls at that face. The hero of the people. The man who could not be bought. Who faced down ministers and foreign companies and petty businessmen. The man who was willing to fight even his own ministry. Sent to a desk job when he became too troublesome, and then put back on the street when he became even more so. The man who laughed at death threats, and survived 3 assassinations before the 4th felled him. Hawk Sang grimaces. The number 4 is everywhere in his mind these days. The Tiger Bangkok only got 4 chances. How many has he himself used up? Hawk Sang studies the dock and the clustered people, all unable to make their ships. With the sharpened senses of a refugee, he smells hazard in the wind, sharper than the sea air that sweeps across a clipper and presages typhoon. The tiger is dead. Captain J.D.'s painted eyes stare out at Hawk Sang, and Hawk Sang has the sudden, horrified feeling that the tiger is not dead, that in fact he is hunting. Hawk Sang shies away from the poster as if it is Blister Us durian. He knows in his bones, knows as surely as his clan is all dead and buried in Malaya, that it's time to run. Time to hide from tigers that hunt through the night. Time to plunge into leech-infested jungles and eat cockroaches and slither through the mud of the rainy season as it gushes in torrents. It doesn't matter where he goes. All that matters is that it's time to flee. Hawk Sang stares out at the anchor pad clipper ship. Time to make hard decisions. Time, in truth, to give up on Spring Life Factory and its blueprints. Delays will only make it worse. Money must be spent. Survival secured. This raft is sinking. Yeah, see? Tiger's not dead.
Definitely not dead. Definitely not. Definitely not.
No.
You get about 20 more minutes.
Next chapter's pretty short. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can do that in 20 minutes easy. I think. I'm sure. Probably.
Easy. 20 minutes easy.
Carlisle is already waiting anxiously in the rickshaw when Anderson comes out of his building. The man's eyes flick from right to left, cataloging the darkness around him in nervous rotation. The man has the trembling cautiousness of a rabbit. You look jumpy, Anderson notes as he climbs in. Carlisle grimaces. The white shirts just took the factory, confiscated everything. Anderson glances up at his own apartment, glad that poor old Yates chose to locate far from the rest of the farang. You lose much? Cash in the safe, some customer lists, and that I was keeping away for our offices. Carlisle calls forward to the rickshaw driver, giving directions in Thai. You better have something to offer these people. Akarat knows what I'm offering. They begin rolling through the humid night. Cheshire scatter, Carlisle glances behind him, scanning it for followers. No one's officially going after Farang, but you know we're next on the list. I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to keep a toehold in the country. Look on the bright side. If they go after Farang, Akarat won't be far behind. They spin across the darkened city ahead of them. A checkpoint materializes. Carlisle mops his forehead. He's sweating like a pig. The white shirts hail their rickshaw, and they slow. Anderson feels a prickle of tension. You sure this will work? Carlisle wipes his brow again. We'll know soon enough. The rickshaw coasts to a stop, and the white shirts surround them. Carlisle speaks rapidly, hands across a piece of paper. The white shirts confer for a moment, and then they're giving obsequious wise, motioning the Farang forward. I'll be damned. Carlisle laughs, relief obvious in his voice. The right stamps on the piece of paper do wonders. I'm amazed that Akarat still has any influence. Carlisle shakes his head. Akarat couldn't do this. The buildings turn to slums as they near the seawall. The rickshaw swerves around pieces of concrete that have fallen from the heights of an old expansion hotel. Anderson supposes it must have been lovely in the past. The terrace levels rise above them, silhouetted in moonlight, but now slum shacks lap all around it, and the last bits of its plate glass windows glimmer like teeth. The rickshaw slows to a halt at the foot of the seawall's embankment. Paired guardian Naga flank the stairs to the top of the seawall. They watch as Carlisle pays the rickshaw man. Come on. Carlisle leads Anderson up the steps, his hands trailing along the scales of the Naga from the top of the levee. They have clear view of the city. The grand palace shines in the distance. High walls obscure the inner courts that the house of the Child Queen and her entourage, but its gold spiked shetty rise above, gleaming softly in the moonlight. Carlisle tugs Anderson's sleeve. Don't dawdle. Anderson hesitates, searching the darkness for the shoreline below. Where are the white shirts? They should be all over this place. Don't worry. They have no authority here. He laughs at some secret joke and ducks under the sisent that strings along the levee's top. Come on. He scrambles down the rubbled embankment, picking his way toward the lap of the waves. Anderson hesitates, still scanning the open area, then follows. As they reach the shoreline, a keep spring skiff materializes out of the darkness, hurtling toward him. Anderson almost bolts, thinking it's a white shirt patrol, but Carlisle whispers, "It's ours." They wade out into the shallows and clamber aboard. The boat pivots sharply, and they cut away from shore. Moonlight glints on the waves, a blanket of silver. The only sound in the boat came from the slap of waves and the hull and the tick of kink springs unwinding. Ahead of them, a barge looms, dark except for a few LED running lights. Their skiff bumps against the side. A moment later, a rope ladder lofts over the side, and they clamber up into the darkness. Crewmen wide respectfully as they come aboard. Carlisle makes a motion for Anderson to keep quiet as they are led below decks. At the end of a corridor, guards flank a door. They call through, announcing the arriving Farang, and the door opens, revealing a group of men at a large dining table, all laughing and drinking. One of the men is Akarat. Another, Anderson recognizes as an admiral who harries the cavalry ships going to Co-Angriet. Another he thinks is perhaps a southern general in one corner. A sleek man wearing a black military uniform stands, watching, eyes attentive. Another. Anderson sucks in his breath. Carlisle whispers, "Get down and show some respect." He's already falling to his knees and making a crab. Anderson drops as quickly as he can. The Somdat Chao watches expressionless as they pay obeisance. Akarat laughs at their bowing and scraping. He comes around the table and brings them to their feet. No need for so much formality, he says, smiling. Come, join us. We're all friends here. Indeed, Somdat Chao smiles and raises a glass. Come and drink. Anderson whines again, as deeply as he is able. Hawk Sing claims that the Somdat Chao has killed more people than the Environment Ministry has slaughtered chickens. Before he was appointed protector of the Child Queen, he was a general, and his campaigns in the East are the brutal stuff of legend. If it weren't for the accident of his common birth line, it is speculated that he might even think to supplant royalty. Instead, he looms behind the throne, and all crab before him. Anderson's heart is pounding. With the Somdat Chao backing a change in government, anything is possible. After years of searching and the failure in Finland, a seed bank is close, and with it, the answer to nightshades and gnaw, and 1,000 other genetic puzzles. This hard-eyed man who toasts him with a smile that could be friendly or feral holds the keys to everything. A servant offers wine to Anderson and Carlyle. They join the assembled men at the table. We were just talking about the Cold War, Akarat supplies. The Vietnamese have given up on Phnom Penh for the moment. Good news, then. The conversation continues, but Anderson only half listens. Instead, he furtively observes the Somdat Chao. The last time he saw the man was outside the Environment Ministry's temple to Phra as they both gawked at the Japanese delegation's Windup Girl. In person, the man appears much older than in the pictures that adorn the city and depict him as a loyal defender of the Child Queen. His face is mottled with drink, and his eyes are sunken with the debauch he is rumored to like so well. Hawk Sing claims that his brutal reputation on the battlefield is matched in his private life, and though the ties may crab before his image, he is not loved as the Child Queen is. And now, as the Somdat Chao looks up and catches Anderson's gaze, Anderson thinks he sees why. He's met cavalry executives like this, men intoxicated on their power and influence, their ability to bring nations to heel with the threat of a soy pro embargo. A hard, brutal man. Anderson wonders if the Child Queen will actually reach the fullness of her power with this man standing so close. It seems unlikely. Conversation around the table continues to carefully avoid the reason for their midnight rendezvous. They speak of harvests in the north and discuss the problem of the Mekong now that the Chinese have placed more dams at its source. They talk about new clipper ship designs that Mishimoto is preparing for production. 40 knots with favorable winds. Carlyle pounds the table gleefully. A hydrofoil package and 1,500 tons of cargo. I'm going to buy a fleet of them. Akarat laughs. I thought air freight was the future. Heavy lift dirigibles. With those clippers, I'm willing to hedge my bets. During the old expansion, there was a mix of transit options, air and sea. I don't see why it won't be the same this time. The new expansion is on everyone's minds these days. Akarat's smile fades. He glances at the Somdat Chao who gives a barely discernible nod. The trade minister goes on, speaking directly to Anderson. Some elements of the kingdom oppose this progress. Benighted elements, to be sure, but inconveniently tenacious as well. If you're asking for assistance, Anderson says, we remain happy to provide it. Another pause. Akarat's eyes stray again to the Somdet Shaukrea. He clears his throat. There are concerns still about the nature of your assistance. The history of your sort doesn't invite confidence. A bit like climbing into bed with a nest of scorpions, the Somdet Shaukrea supplies. Anderson smiles slightly. It seems you are already surrounded by a number of nests. With your permission, some of them could be removed, to mutual benefit. The price you're asking is too high, Akarat says. Anderson keeps his voice neutral. We are asking for nothing other than access. And this man, this Gibbons. You know of him, then? Anderson leans forward. You know where he is? The table falls silent. Akarat glances again to the Somdet Shaukrea. The man shrugs, but it's enough of an answer for Anderson. Gibbons is here. Somewhere in the city, probably in the city, no doubt designing follow-up triumph to the Gnaw. We are not asking for the country, Anderson says. The Thai kingdom is nothing like Burma or India. It has its own history, one independence. We respect that absolutely. The assembled men's faces turn stony. Anderson curses himself. Fool, you're speaking to their terrors. He changes tracks. There are significant opportunities here. Cooperation benefits both parties. My people are prepared to offer significant assistance to the kingdom if we can come to an agreement. Help with your border disputes, calorie security that hasn't been enjoyed since the expansion. All of this can be yours. This is an opportunity for all of us. Anderson trails off. The general is nodding. The admiral is frowning. Akarat and the Somdet Shaukrea are blanks. He can't read them at all. Please excuse us, Akarat says. It's not a request. The guards indicate that Anderson and Carlyle should leave. A moment later, they are out in the passageway with 4 guards surrounding them. Carlyle stares at the floor. They don't seem convinced. Can you think of any reason why they wouldn't trust you? I've got weapons and the money for the bribes ready to be landed. If they can open communication with Praxis generals, I can buy and equip them. Where is the risk for them? Anderson shakes his head, irritated. They should be jumping at the opportunity. It's the most equitable deal we've ever offered. It's not the offer, it's you. You and Agragen and every bit of your damn history. If they trust you, it happens. If not, Carlyle shrugs. The door opens and they're invited back in. Akarat says, "Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that we will take your offer under advisement." Carlyle slumps, deflated by the polite refusal. The Somdet Shaukrea smiles slightly as the news is delivered, pleased, perhaps, to slap the Farang down. More polite words are passed around the cabin, but Anderson hardly hears them. Rejection. He's so close he can almost taste the Gnaw, and still they throw up barriers. There has to be a way to reopen discussion. He stares at the Somdet Shaukrea. He needs a lever. Something to break this impasse. Anderson almost laughs out loud. Pieces click into place. Carlyle is still mumbling disappointment, but Anderson just smiles and whines, hunting for a way in, a way to keep the conversation going a bit longer. I completely understand your concerns. We have not earned sufficient trust. Perhaps we could discuss something different. A project of friendship. Say, something less high stakes. The Admiral grimaces. We want nothing from your hand. Please, don't be hasty. We offer in good faith, and regarding that other project, if you change your mind about our assistance, whether it happens in a week, or a year, or 10 years, you will always find us supportive. A very fine speech, Akarat says. He's smiling, even as he shoots the Admiral a sharp look. I'm sure there are no hard feelings here. Please at least have one last drink. We've troubled you to come so far. There's no reason we shouldn't part as friends. Still in the game then. Anderson feels a rush of relief. Our sentiments exactly. Soon the drink is flowing, and Carlyle is promising that he would happily ship an order of saffron from India as soon as the current embargo is lifted. And Akarat is telling a story about a white shirt trying to take 3 bribes from 3 different food stalls who keeps losing his count. And all the while, Anderson watches the Sonda Chalpreya, waiting for an opening. When the man goes to a window to look out at the water, Anderson moves to join him. It's a pity that your proposal wasn't accepted, the man says. Anderson shrugs. I'm happy to be walking out alive. A few years ago, I would have been trampled by megadons for simply trying to meet with you. The Sonda Chalpreya laughs. You're confident. We'll let you walk out. Confident enough, anyway. It's not a bad gamble, Anderson says. You and Akarat are honorable, even if we don't agree on every particular. I don't consider it a particularly risky bet. No, half the people in this room suggested that feeding you to the river carp tonight was the wisest course. He pauses. My computer stirs.
I saw that.
The ghost is at it again. He pauses, hard sunken eyes staring at Anderson. It was a very close thing. Anderson makes himself smile. I gather you weren't in agreement with your admiral. Not tonight. Anderson wise. Then I'm grateful. Don't thank me yet. I may yet decide to have you killed. Your kind have a very poor reputation. Would you at least give me a chance to bargain for my life? Anderson asks wryly. Sonda Chalpreya shrugs. It wouldn't do you any good. Your life is the most interesting thing I could take. Then I would have to offer something unique. The man's hollow eyes flick back to Anderson. Impossible. Not at all, Anderson says. I can give you something you've never seen before. Could do it tonight, even. Something exquisite. It's not for the squeamish, but it's astonishing and unique. Would that keep you from feeding me to the river carp? The Sonda Chalpreya gives him a look of annoyance. There is nothing you can show me that I have not already seen. Would you care to wager? Still gambling, Farang? Sonda Chalpreya laughs. Haven't you risked enough for one night? Not at all. I'm just trying to make sure my limbs stay attached. It hardly seems like a risk, given how much I might lose otherwise. He meets the Sonda Chalpreya's eyes. But I'm willing to bet. Are you? The Sonda Chalpreya gives him a hard look. Calls to his men. Our cavalry man is a gambler. He says he can show me something I haven't seen before. What do you all think of that? His men all laugh. The odds are very much against you, the Sonda Chalpreya observes. Still, I think this bet is a good one, and I'm willing to place good money on it. Money? The Sonda Chalpreya makes a face. I thought we were talking about your life. What about the plans for my Kingspring factory, then? I could simply take that if I wanted. The Sonda Chalpreya snaps his fingers irritated. Just like that, and they're mine. All right, Anderson grimaces. All or nothing. What if I offered you and your kingdom my company's next iteration of Utex rice. Would that be a worthwhile bet? And not just the rice, but the grain, before it is rendered sterile. Your people can plant it and replant it for as long as it's viable against blister rust. My life can't be worth more than that. The room falls quiet. The psalm that Shae studies him, and to balance that risk, what is it you want if you win? I want to go forward with the political project we discussed earlier, under the same terms as we already proposed, terms which we both know are entirely favorable to you and your kingdom. The psalm dat Shae's eyes narrow. You're a tenacious one, aren't you? And what's to keep you from simply withholding the Utex rice you're offering if you lose? Anderson smiles and waves a hand toward Carlisle. I assume that you would have myself and Mr. Carlisle here torn apart by megadons if we failed to make good. Would that be satisfactory? Carlisle laughs, his voice tinged with hysteria. What kind of bet is that? Anderson doesn't take his eyes away from the psalm dat Shae. The only one that matters. I trust absolutely that His Excellency will be honest if I manage to surprise him, and we will place ourselves in his hands as a token of that trust. It's a perfectly reasonable bet. We're both honorable men. The psalm dat Shae smiles. I accept your bet. He laughs and claps Anderson on the back. Surprise me, Ferenc, and good luck to you. To see you trampled would be a pleasure. They make a strange party as they move across the city. The psalm dat Shae's retinue guarantees them access through the checkpoints, and the surprised shouts of white shirts echo in the darkness as they realize who they're trying to halt. Carlisle wipes his forehead with his handkerchief. Christ, you're a crazy bastard. I should never have agreed to introduce you. Now that the bet is made and the risk defined, Anderson is inclined to agree. The Utex rice offering is a real risk. Even if his handlers back the play, the finance people will fight. One lost calorie man is infinitely more replaceable than primary seed bank stock. If the ties start exploiting the rice, it will undercut profits for years. It's fine, he mutters. Trust me. Trust you? Carlisle's hands are shaking. Trust you to put me under a megadont. He glances around. I should just run for it. Don't bother. Psalm dat Shae gave his guards instructions. If we have second thoughts now, he jerks his head back towards the men riding in the rickshaw behind. They'll kill you as soon as you try to run. A few minutes later, familiar towers rise into view. Blowing shit? Carlisle asks. Jesus, no, you're seriously taking the psalm dat Shae here? Calm down. You're the one who gave me the idea. Anderson gets down from his rickshaw. The psalm dat Shae and his retinue all mill before the entrance. The psalm dat Shae gives him a pitying look. This is the best you can do. Girls, sex. He shakes his head. Don't be too quick to judge. Anderson indicates that they should come inside. Please, I'm sorry that we'll have to climb the stairs. The accommodations do not benefit your rank, but I assure you that the experience is worth it. The psalm dat Shae shrugs and lets Anderson lead. His guards crowd close, nervous in the dark confines. The junkies and whores in the stairwells all catch sight of the psalm dat Shae and collapse into panicked crabs. Word of their arrival rushes up the stairwell. The Shae's guards run ahead, searching the darkness. The doors of soil open. Girls drop to their knees. The psalm dat Shae looks around himself with distaste. This is a place you Ferenc frequent? As I said, not the finest, and I'm very sorry for that. Anderson beckons him. It's this way. He strides across the room and pulls aside the curtain, revealing the inner theater. Himiko lies on stage with Kanika kneeling over her. The men crowd around her as Kanika draws out the telltale movements of the Windup Girl's design. Her body twitches and jerks in the light of glowworms. The Sonda Chalpreya stops short and stares. I thought only the Japanese had them, he murmurs. What time is it?
After.
After? Well, there we go.
Oh, was it the end?
End of that chapter.
Oh, well, there you go. So that marks, what, you got like 5 or 6 chapters?
I think I got through more than that.
It was
Like
quite
7.
a bit. Yeah.
Some of them were really short, though.
Mm-hmm. A lot of progress, a lot of stuff happening. Boy, this is getting intense, and you don't have much left. Probably, what, like a fourth?
Yeah, about a quarter left.
Not much more to go now. Probably could wrap it up very soon.
Yep. And believe me when I say things get even more intense.
Nice. Go sell his girlfriend out. That's a shame. Oh, well.
It's very sad, but stuff happens after.
Anywho, thanks for watching, everybody, or listening, everybody. This has been Shae's Story Show for the Windup Girl. We'll be back next Friday, same time, and we'll continue reading then. Have a great night, or day, or